What up guys, Alex here. Working on something different today versus working on like Shiro or any other car project like my wide body. Today we're going to be working on my differential setup for the black 89. That's the one with the VG33. I recently made 838 wheel horsepower at 41 pounds of boost. It's a beast. What you're looking at in front of you is my differential setup for the car, and then now remind you, I have a S13 subframe swap in it, so this allows me to run a lot of different axle and diff combinations. It really opened the door for a lot of aftermarket setups. So what you're looking at here is a 350Z diff, but this is the Nismo GT Pro CLSD 1.5 way. This differential is Nissan's and any other aftermarket provider. Actually, this is the strongest differential you can get for any R200. It has 20 clutches total, 10 clutches on each side of the spider gears. So if I was to take this apart, there's the spider gears right there in the center cartridge. You would find 10 clutches on this side and then 10 clutches on this side. And all that means is just tight engagement, very mechanical type LSD here. And these half shafts here, the axle stubs here, these again are the beefiest version that Nissan ever put out. These feature 31 spline axle stubs, where like a Z31, S13, and Z32 NA, those are all 29 spline. The Q45 and twin turbo Z32 diff, the R230, those only have a 30 spline axle stub. So while they're definitely stronger, not as strong as the 350 and 370Z diffs. These are really beefy axle stubs, 31 splines. And then utilizing the Z32 twin turbo and Q45 axle half shafts go into the hubs. Those are 32 splines. So this is literally the strongest combination setup you can get for a Nissan subframe setup. So what we got here going on, I've got my 350Z diff, like I said. I was having a problem ever since I put the Nismo GT Pro in there, where I was getting this constant whine. At first I thought it was wheel bearings. Replaced the wheel bearings, the whining still persisted. So at that point I'm like, you know, it's probably something in the diff. Now when I put the diff in here in this 350Z housing, this was all used by the way, and obviously the diff was brand new. The diff comes with new bearings, right? So but just for the differential bearings, like meaning these are for the axle side. So I had put new bearings there, but never did the pinion bearings. And the pinion bearings, this is the pinion shaft right here. Those would have two bearings, right? You would have, this is the inner bearing, the rear bearing for the pinion, which goes there. And this is the front pinion bearing, which seats opposite, facing down. So it turns out that the pinion bearing from this car, from this diff, was bad. So additionally, when I was checking it out and checking out the diff wear pattern, I saw that the wear pattern was not correct. And what I was seeing was that there, on the drive side, the wear pattern was closest to the root or the toe, and then the coast side was up to at the top of the crown or the heel. Now, some say that's okay based on the forums I was reading, but the factory service manual, well, really any differential manufacturer is going to want you to have center to center wear patterns. Now, in the factory service manual, when you see that pattern, it suggests to pull or retract the pinion away from the diff via using a thinner pinion shim. So I kept going down further and further in pinion shims to the thinnest pinion that Nissan, the thinnest pinion shim that Nissan offered, and it didn't change the pattern whatsoever. And I was at a standstill. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. So I talked to a few buddies and talked to the dealership, and they suggested there's probably a problem with the housing. Now this housing is from an 03 350Z. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with an 03, but you got to remember it's like the first year stuff. There's a possibility that either fatigue or some sort of machining flaw could have happened. It's hard to say at this point. But at this point in given time, I'm gonna discard this. I'm done with this housing. I got a replacement sitting right behind me, and it is quite a different setup. It's actually very rare, and they're really hard to find in the States. But I found one. I got lucky, lucked out, and we're gonna be swapping all this stuff over. So we're gonna be keeping the pinion because I don't see any problems with the pinion. When you look at a pinion, you got to see if there's any bluing or heat stress. I don't see any at all. There's no chipping on the pinion gears. This looks good to me. I don't see any problems with it whatsoever. And then the matching ring gear here, again, I reviewed it, and I didn't find any problems at all. It's a little dirty, I have to clean it up, but I don't see any problems with this. Most likely the problem that I'm gonna suggest that I found in here was the race. As I reinstalled the races for the pinion, I'm guessing that there's a height or tolerance threshold that maybe I passed when hammering the race. It's hard to say, I don't know, but no matter what I did, I could not get the pinion and the ring gear to mesh properly. Nothing I can do to make it happen. So for all intents and purposes, this is done. This is garbage. So that's great. I'll make a lamp out of it or something. So we're going to be using at this point, like I said, got the actual half shafts there. These are brand new bearings. I just put these on. These are brand new 0 mileage bearings on the carrier here, so we're good to continue using that. And then we got new bearings and boxes for the pinion, inner and rear, I'm sorry, front and rear bearings. But yeah, if you look at this, the race here, you can see that there's no wear whatsoever. So these are brand new. So we're going to transfer all this stuff into my new housing, but let me get the housing. It's draining its oil right now. It's a used housing, but it's something very rare. And let me get it down here so I can show you guys what we're going to be transferring this Nismo GT Pro into. Stand by. All right, so here it is. Just took it off of the my oil draining drum for the lift. So first impressions, it looks just like a regular R200 out of a 350 or 370. This particular one came out of a 370Z. The housings are more or less exactly the same. There are some subtle differences, like the pinion companion flange is a little bit different, but overall it's all going to function and work just fine. So check this out. This all looks like a single stud R200, right? 350, 370. Now check out the bottom of this thing. Flip it over so you can see what I'm talking about. Check that out. This is a 370Z R200 with heat sinks molded and casted from factory at the actual carrier itself, not the actual diff cover. This is amazing. So these were for the European or Saudi Arabia, like Middle Eastern market, where the ambient temperature or reflective temperature off of the roads out there are much hotter than they are here in the States. So this provides the utmost, just like extreme cooling standards that Nissan was trying to do for that environment. They're really hard to find. I can't believe I found one myself. I'm looking for another one for my other car for the wide body, but this is going to go in the 89. Limited slips, especially clutch types, they generate a ton of heat. And I'm doing everything I can to help prolong the life of the components of the differential, whether that be the clutches themselves, the oil life, and the bearings, etc., etc. So on my setup, not only do I have the Z1 differential cover here that features oil, external pump cooling capacities and whatnot, so this will go on here, but everything I can to get oil cooled. So I'll have an external pump like I always have. I'll have the extra fins in the housing. I'll have the added capacity with the fins from this diff cover, and this will just be the utmost, just like fantastic setup I can get for my Z31. So what we're going to be doing right now is just do a quick inspection, and I want to see what its wear pattern is right out of the box, like unmodified. I've never even opened this yet, so we're going to look at it together for the first time. And what I'm going after is just a discovery to see what the inside looks like. Now this is an open diff, it's not even a VLSD, which is really weird of why would they put this differential package together just for an open diff. But irregardless, it doesn't matter, I got it here. And then you can tell it's dirty. It's been probably sitting at a junkyard or wherever I bought it from. So after I do a visual inspection, eventually I need to get it degreased and pressure washing and it cleaned up, and I'll get it painted black and make it look brand new, and get it rebuilt and reassembled with the new bearings and get it shimmed properly. So let's not waste any time. Let's go ahead and get this thing opened up and check out the insides of it and get the wear pattern figured out, or documented, I guess, at least. So let's see if we can get this. Usually I'm able to put the diff on a block of wood, but the bottom is so tall that's kind of doing that on its own. So what we'll do is just kind of have it be like that for now. All right, so these are all 14mm heads. I already removed the ABS sensors for the token rings. I'm actually going to use those for traction control in the car, so we'll have to take a look at that. So bear with me for a few moments. I need to go get my number 14 so I can crack these bolts out. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. Got my 14 here on the impact. We're going to zip off the cover and do a review of the pattern. There's still a little bit of residual oil in there, and it's okay. It'll just kind of spread on the table here, but that's fine. So let's go ahead and pop it open and see what's going on. Hopefully nothing bad. I mean, the oil that came out was still golden. It looked really good. So this kind of tube got bent there. All right, last bolt here. Now, normally when you take off a diff cover that's sealed by RTV, you can use like a putty knife. And I'll be honest, I don't know where my putty knife went. My metal-handled putty knife. So I'm just going to use a chisel. It's not the best way of doing it, but I'm not going to reuse the diff cover on this, so I'm okay. If there's any burrs or nicks on it, I'm perfectly fine with that. So if you look at most R200s, you generally have two pry points on opposing corners. So there's one right there, you see that kind of hole right there, and how it's got a little bit of overlap from the diff cover, and there's one opposing it down there. So we're going to go ahead and use the one up here since it's easily accessible. Now I'm just concerned that as a hammer, it might kind of shift, but it should be all right. So just kind of chisel away at it. There it goes. So I just got that popped open. Let's see what's going on in there. So definitely an open diff, and let me show you that differences real quick. We'll put the diff cover in the oil drain there. So if you look at the an open differential, the easiest way to visualize it being open is you can see the spider gears in there. And like when I say open diff, like you got this open window right here, and that is 100% an open diff. Now check this out. Let me put it back down off the block of wood here. Easiest way to tell if it's an open diff or put this back here like that, or an limited slip is if you turn one axle stub or one wheel. If it's an open diff, the other side will spin in an opposite direction. So if I would turn this one forward, you can see how the other end spins backwards. See that? That's an open diff. On a limited slip, both of them are going to turn the same direction. But if you do the pinion side, if you turn that, it doesn't matter if it's open or limited slip, sorry about that, both axle stubs here are going to turn in the same direction. See that? They're going in the same direction. That's just how a differential works in general. But an open differential, the easiest way is you spin one axle shaft or one wheel, and you'll see that the other one spins in the opposite direction. All right, first glance is first here. Just looking at it, when you look at an R200 over 350 or 370, when you look at the ring gear here, do you see how thick the meat is from the back end of the teeth downwards to the back of the face of the back of the ring gear here? The thickness to me tells me right away that this is a 3.3 gear. Now to compare, this is a 3.54. You can visually see how this is much thinner of meat. It has nothing to do with strength, it's just how they do the offset for the different gearing. So if there's ever any doubt of what gear you have, you can do a visual inspection or you can do math. Now check this out. Get the camera. So you see those numbers on there? It says 46 colon 13. Now if you do 13 divided by 46, well guess what? Or 46 divided by 13, you get 3.54. Now it's the same thing on this. Once we find let's get the camera adjusted. If I can find it here, which can kind of be hard because there it is right there. Right there in front of me. Let's see what that one says. Nope, not quite yet. A little further down. Sorry, it's kind of hard with it rotating with everything else under it. Let's see if I can get this. There we go. All right, so if we spin this, I'll get the camera adjusted. respin this, we'll find the numbers eventually. And those aren't it. Those are just different manufacturing stamps. It might take a while. I know this is the 3.3, but eventually you'll find the numbers and you just do the division on it and it'll come out to be 3.3 ratio. That's how Nissan does it, and that's how they've always done it since like the 280Z and whatnot. Even, I don't know about the earlier dots in the 240s and 260s. I haven't really dealt in those differentials all that often, but ever since the R200s I've been playing around with those. So if we keep turning it, a little faster just by turning the gear itself. Well, got me right back where I was starting. Ah, there it is. Yeah, right there. So it says 714. Yep. So you do 7 divided by 14 there. Is that right? Well, anyways, we'll get going on this. So it's still dirty inside with oil, and that's okay. But the mission at this point would be to, I want to check the wear pattern. So what I'm going to do, kind of get on the side like that. Let's get the camera down. And all I'm going to do is clean off a little bit of some teeth here, like 4 teeth. I'm going to put some compound on there. Yellow marking compound, and I just want to check to see from the manufacturer, from the factory itself of R200s being made. I want to see what its pattern is right out of the box. I'm curious because like I said, on mine I was fighting it and I just gave up. So let's see if I get this adjusted right. So like I said, I'm just going to do 4 teeth here, and you don't put a lot of this on. Just do a very little amount. Let's see which ones are the clean ones. Yeah, so I hope you guys can see. So a little bit of this stuff goes a long ways, and you're just coating it. You want to do both sides of the teeth inside there, and you're trying to capture the drive, which is, you know, forward motion, and the coast. And you gotta get all sides of the tooth there. So like I said, you don't need very much. You're just painting a little thin coat, and this stuff spreads so nicely. It goes a long ways. So got 2 done so far. Going for the 3rd. And just to give you kind of like I'm not an expert in differentials. I'm learning still. So I might be making mistakes. You guys might know more than I do about this stuff, but I'm getting to the point where I feel comfortable doing this. So I'm just trying to, again, identify what's going on with my car. Now what's interesting is I had the same differential setup in the wide body. I have a 350Z Nismo GT Pro, the same 20 clutches differential. And when I put that one together, sorry, the camera's not adjusting nicely, but when I put that one together, I didn't have any problems. The pattern was good. There's no noise, even though that car is loud as hell, but it's being completely good. So I have no idea what's wrong with this setup on this differential. So if you want to see what I'm using here for the compound, this is a, get the camera, this is AC Delco gear marking compound. There's the part number on there if you can see that. I bought off Amazon, I think for like 10, 12 bucks. All right, so when you do a test for the wear pattern, the right way of doing it, it helps to have a helper doing this. The idea is to put a little bit of resistance on the pinion gear itself, or the companion flange, and that would simulate. I'm having a heck of a time with this because of that. There. that would simulate load or resistance through the drivetrain. So it's gonna be really hard for me to do that. I'm not gonna go through such great extent of doing that properly. All I'm gonna do is just simply rotate it and rotate it back via axle half shafts here. Now again, it's not gonna be a perfect test because I gotta get a little resistance up there, but we're gonna just do this as it is now. So go until you see it, then rock it back. All right, so let's see what we've got going on here. So let's get the GoPro here. So, did I bring it all the way back? Here it comes, sorry. So check that out. So the wear pattern for the drive is good. This is the drive side. It's right dab in the middle. That's good. The coast side, which is on the other side, it's a little bit down towards the toe, but more or less centered. I guess that's fine. So I'm at least capturing this as a before and after. A matter of fact, I want to get my phone and take a couple pictures of this just for future reference. But I can tell you that it's vastly different than what I was fighting on the 350Z variant. So it's always good practice here to take some, you know, before and after pictures of what you're working on. Just good practice. So let me rotate it up, capture those. All right, cool. All right, so got the pictures taken for documentation purposes. Let's go ahead and get this torn apart for now. And I want to get the housing dripping overnight. This will be a couple-day process here because look at all the oil coming out. Now check this out. That oil, it looks really good. Like check this out. I mean, it's virtually very clean oil. So whoever, I don't know how many miles are on this. I should have looked, but it's not very much. But it looks at the gear oil looks pretty good. All right, so on this type of differential where you have the axle half shafts or axle stubs coming out of it, you got to remove the axle stubs on the side. So the easiest way I found to do it, a lot of people I've seen people get like a chisel or like a punch and start beating at the half shafts, and that does work, but honestly just a long pry bar and you just get to the insides of the token ring there and you just give it a good couple little jabs there and it comes right out. Look at that. Like that was no sweat. That's super simple. And it's even easier, I believe, on this side because I'm right-handed. So just kind of stick it right there and pop it just like that. That's it. Don't break your back trying to hammer it out with a chisel. So these are kind of cool to look at, I guess. All right, so next thing you gotta do is remove the bearing caps, which are these right here. You wanna take note of its positioning because they're side specific and they're directional specific. So what I usually do is I just clean off the surface. Now, if you want to get a Sharpie, if you want to get a marker and do L and R for marking, that's fine, that's great. And I'll probably do that right now just to be a little more thorough with this, but usually a picture will suffice. Just take a picture and that'll work for now. But I'll go ahead and get some brake parts cleaner. I thought I had some on the bench here. Actually, there's some right behind me. Here they are. And we're gonna just clean the surfaces, and I'll just take my Sharpie and write on it. It's L and R. And as I'm looking at the diff, this is as if the diff was mounted in the car. So this is driver's side, and this is passenger side. So for, you know, a left-hand drive car, that is. So I'll just go ahead and just kind of clean the surface here. I will take a picture as well, just because that's my tendency of how I like to document before and afters. Okay, so that's that. Let's go ahead and take my Sharpie. So I will write like down over here, L And maybe up here, R, right? So that's just a good indicator, little reminder. And maybe it doesn't hurt to put like a directional up arrow, because like I said, they are size specific and orientation matters as well. But you'll see when you take off the caps, there's a notch that only allows the cap to go in a certain way, so you really can't screw up which direction goes where. But again, just being thorough and doing everything as detailed as you can. So let me get my phone and just take a quick picture of the setup here. All right. Okay, so those are 17mm heads, and get those buzzed off real quick. And actually, before I buzz this off, knowing that I'm going to be taking out the pinion, now is a good opportunity to get the pinion loose. So I should have done that earlier. Excuse all the shims bouncing around, my bad. But we'll go ahead and get this loose, and you can just hold the pinion flange by hand. There's so much resistance on the bottom end that's holding it together. This is a 30mm nut, so all I do is just kind of grab the side here and just going to tear into it. There we go. So that was easy. So we'll pull this off later, probably tomorrow, but I at least want to get the nut pulled off for now. I'll go pick up all those shims that just dropped. Okay. So like I just mentioned, the side bearing caps are a 17. Let's go ahead and buzz those off. It looks like my impact socket's not going to fit. That's fine. I'll have to get a thinner wall. That's fine. I happen to have it right here. It's interesting that there's a little bit of differences though. Like the 350Z diff, you can definitely get that one in there, but that's fine. Okay, man, the gear oil's starting to smell pretty good. Yeah. All right, so like I said, they're side specific. So what I do to take these off, by the way, is you get the bolts kind of pulled out a little bit and you just kind of rock it side to side. And then I usually go with the bearing cap on the right side and this bearing cap on the other side, just for kind of being thorough here. All right, so you got the axle half shafts pulled out, you got the bearing caps pulled out. Now you got to pull the center section out. Now, Nissan does have a tool. There is a differential pulling tool, could be universal. It's essentially like a slide hammer. You hook it up to a couple points there in the differential and you slide it out. I don't have one, I don't need one. Here's how I do it. It works. If you don't like it, close your eyes. But I get a good old crowbar, traditional crowbar that has your good old shape there at the end of it. And it wraps behind it like that. And all I do, let me adjust the camera so you can see, a couple good bangs behind it and it just pops right out. And there's no damage at all. It just comes right out. So it's ready to come out. Now before I just pull it out, what I want to do is capture to see if there's any, sorry, I just touched my GoPro. I want to see if there's any shims here, because if there are, I want to record what they are. Most likely, they're not going to be the right shims for this housing, for this Nismo GT Pro, but I'm going to use it as my base measurement. I got to start somewhere and figure out where I need to go as far as the side-to-side measurement. So as I pull here, yep, here's one shim right here. That's one. And then the other one should be, if it has one, yeah, I can see it. So here comes the diff. So there's the bearing cap. And there it is. So we'll keep that over there. And what I actually will do, kind of like the original ones out of the 350, if I can find them, I'm trying to find which ones they were. I'll pull them out and measure them and write the measurement down, because it's important to know or document what was originally in the car. Forgive me, I had them somewhere around here. But anyways, there's one right there. See, I wrote it down, it's kind of hard to see. But I wrote down the pre-measurements, that way I know where I'm at as far as the, before and after. So this open diff, to me, it's just trash, it's garbage, but they're kind of cool to look at. Now, if you have a hydraulic press, even like a good old Harbor Freight one like I have, these races are incredible and they're really strong. Like even these old bearings, I use these for like using as a press or like getting ball joints out. So keep these. Like when I do the bushings on this diff, I'm going to use this one right here to push out the old bushings. So these are really good tools for your press. So keep those. But what we'll do for right now is we'll go ahead and put this in there just to kind of keep it in there. I'll get the old one because again, we're not using this anymore. And these are not the same. If you look visually, they look kind of the same, but they're different. The Nismo GT Pro, because there's so many clutches and as far as the spider gear engagement, it's a different threshold there. So you got to use what came with the Nismo GT Pro. Now, a Cusco or a Kaz diff will have you use the factory axle half shafts, and that I don't get why. I keep calling these half shafts. I'm sorry, these are axle stubs. But the Nismo GT Pro comes with the new ones, and they're just the right way of doing it. So what we're gonna do is put those back in there, and as far as I'm aware, this is a good. I don't know what you want to do. It's a good old paperweight, but like I mentioned earlier, I already did the bearings on that one. They're brand new bearings, but what you would essentially do is you would need a bearing separator tool, and I have one, so it's sitting over at the press. But I had such a hard time getting the bearings off of my Nismo GT Pro that I eventually just took my angle grinder, or if you have a Dremel, and I just did a small little slot just to relieve a little bit of the pressed tension, and then it just popped right out. So yeah, that's what I did to relieve that. And while we're talking through this, I mentioned I'll be done at this point, and I actually lied. We're gonna go ahead and pull the pinion out right now, because I want this whole thing to drain overnight, and I want the pinion to be removed just in case there's preventing it from flowing down. So let me get this center section of the diff kind of sitting aside over there, and yeah, we're gonna get that out. So as I mentioned, we already got the pinion removed, and all we need to do at this point is get the a 3-jaw puller. I call this the jaws of life here, and this is actually what they say to do in the factory service manual. I've been reading that thing like crazy lately, just trying to understand what I've been doing wrong, but I don't think I have been doing anything wrong. And these nuts like to back off by themselves, but so just get that on there like that. I'm using this for a while. I know it's a number 18, and then before you zip on it, you need to get another pry bar, keep it in there like that. You need a little bit of a tension to hold it there. All right, here we go. So all you're doing is you're backing off the companion flange. This helps if I have it on the right way. My mistake. All right, let's try that again, shall we? Huh. All right. There it goes. And man, those differential shims really don't like it up there. I'll grab those later. All right, we got that off. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we are swapping over the pinions, and there's going to be a challenge for a little while as far as determining what pinion shim I need to run. Now I bought 10 different sizes already from Nissan, 10 different pinion shims. I don't know which one's going to work. I have no idea, because this one is set for the 3.3 gear, and I'm going to run the 3.5 gear. So what I have to do is take an educated guess. Now how I'm going to do that is once I pull out the pinion here, I'll remove the shim, and I'm going to see which one is there. I'll measure the shim, I'll measure the crush wash that's associated with it, and I'll take a best estimated guess as far as which one I think I'm going to start off with. Now, through lessons learned recently, I bought some brand new bearings, and I ended up destroying the rear pinion bearing. This is the original rear pinion bearing from the 350Z. I had bought a replacement and I destroyed it through the process of pulling and installing, pulling and installing, and it just tweaked the cage here to where all the bearings popped off. And yeah, that kind of angered me because this is a $100 bearing. So my buddy John was telling me, use your original bearing as your mock-up bearing. So what I did is I took my die grinder and just cleaned out a little bit inside. So where this is no longer a pressed bearing, it's a slip-on bearing. And the idea is you use this to mock up your shim fitment. So it's on there so tight, there's no wobble, but yet I can slip it on, slip it off. So this will be my mock-up bearing. And then once I determine what my actual pinion shim is going to be, I'll put the real one on and press it on. So let me show you the new bearings using my Xterra here as my little bench. Got new crush sleeves because we're going to go through some. Here's all the varying sizes of shims and got seals. Here's that new bearing sitting here in the box. Here's the front pinion bearing as well. And up here, you can see, got more shims. So we have all these shims and all these parts that we're gonna do this right. I'm using all OEM parts here. That's the only way to do it. But it's a challenge because you have to measure and adjust, measure and adjust. It's just one thing after another. So, and that's the Z1 diff cover. Like I said, we're gonna rock that guy. So we got this off. So you can be kind of a knucklehead if you want. You can use a hammer and bust that down, but I have a press. So we're gonna walk this over to the press here in a minute and we're gonna press this bad boy out. So give me a minute, I'll get over there. All right, so we're here in front of my little Harbor Freight press. I've had this for years. I think it's time I get the bigger model, but this one's done its fair work for me, so we're gonna continue using it. So again, we need to get the pinion pulled out, and so we can look at the shim there. But here's that brand new $100 rear pinion bearing that the cage got tweaked and all the bearings popped out, and it's like there's nothing you can do at that point. Brand new $100 bearing. Now it's a good press tool, I guess, but it's kind of frustrating. So what we're gonna do is we'll get that pinion bearing popped out. I'm sorry, the pinion itself popped out, and then I want to remove the actual rear bearing as well, so we can take a measurement of the existing pinion shim and its crush sleeve. So what I do when I'm doing this, I got a solid brace here, a little piece of wood to catch the pinion when it falls down when you press it out. You don't want to mar up the pinion itself, so a little bit of wood will actually be enough to buffer it. So we get the differential over it, and let's see if we can get the camera adjusted. There we go. That should work out to get that down. So I'll just prime it with my finger first, then I'll use the stick to get it down there. Okay, so I don't recommend you guys use a hammer to pull the pinion out, because you're going to mar up that end. You're going to mushroom head the threads there, and you'll be kind of pissed off about you not being able to use it again. So you'll hear it drop in a second. There it goes. All right, so go ahead and retract it. All right, let's get that up all the way. So sometimes the pinion drops. I pull the cover off. I'll try to prevent that from happening like that. Okay, so here's the pinion out of there. You can see the compound that rubbed. And this is the pre-existing pinion rear gear. Here's the crush sleeve. You want to save this, not necessarily to reuse it. No, you can't reuse these, but it's a good measuring reference at this point to know where it was with the whatever shim is down there between the pinion bearing and the pinion itself. So we're going to set this up here. And so at this point, I need to pull off this bearing from the pinion. So how I do that, this might be a challenge because this pinion, the girth of it is bigger than the 3.54, and of quite honestly, I don't have the right blocks here to get this done properly, so we're going to kind of figure it out as we go. But this is how I did it on the other one, is I'll rotate this and kind of get things set up in such a way that I get the pinion. And then here's that bearing separator tool I was talking about, this guy. So that will go on the base of the pinion bearing. So you just slide it in there like this. It's kind of hard to do sometimes, you know. There we go. It's easier if you had us on the bench, but we're just kind of crouching here. I need a better press. All right, so you got that kind of mocked up. And these nuts here, you just get these hand tight. No reason to get them super, you know, wrenched on there tight. You just get them hand tight. But these threads are starting to bind. So I'm not sure if there he goes. It's kind of fighting me for a little bit. All right, so the challenge I'm foreseeing is that I don't know if I can get enough clearance, you know, in terms of the press coming down for the pinion to drop lower. So we'll have to figure this out as we go. But let me go grab one more thing in terms of a tool for the press. Be right back. All right, so I had to reset. I wasn't feeling comfortable with how it was before. This you can see there's a bolt here for the bearing separator is starting to get old and fatigued, which happens. You just replace them. So what I got here is a little mock-up jig, if you will. Got a lot of pieces of wood here to kind of get things happening here as far as the separation of the bearing and the pinion. So these pieces of wood are going to kind of hold the things in places. So let's go ahead and get going on this. Now my concern is that this is kind of fatigued and bending, so there's going to be a little flex, there's going to be a little play, and I didn't do any heating of this bearing, which if you get torch, sometimes you can heat it up and it might expand and allow things to happen a little easier. So let's go ahead and just get going and see how it works out. As it is, I might get the torch. So I can hear wood crunching, that's okay. What we're going to be looking for is the pinion to start coming up on the shaft here. It should start. Man, oh man, that thing is really bending. There it goes. Wow. Yeah, check that out, guys. I mean, that is bent. That bolt is not happy. So we're gonna go down like one more click. It's starting to come, but now we gotta go get into the bolt. I think I have one more set. So we're going to have to reset this for a second. That's funny. That's what you get for buying Harbor Freight craft tools, but that's why they're disposable. So give me one more moment. We're going to reset this one last time and we should be good to go. All right. Got those bolts replaced. They're a little bit short, but they'll work out. So we're going to go ahead and get this finalized, get this bearing pressed out. I was reviewing the cage. If you can see, the cage is starting to be deformed, just like I'm assuming the other one failed, but we'll get it out this time for sure. So you can hear the wood starting to kind of give way again. And it sounds like, and it looks like we'll have to reset this a few times. Man, it is not a happy press experience right now, but slowly but surely we'll get it out. So I'll have to reset it again right now. I need to get like hardened bolts for this so they don't bend as easily. But the risk when you do hardened bolts is that they can snap on you. So it's never really, it's kind of a toss-up. All right, so now that we got it on there a little bit more, we can get the nuts a little bit going here. All right, so we're making headway. So let's get things kind of reset here. There we go. This should do it, guys. We got it now. Cool. That should do it. Let's go ahead and get this bearing out of here, huh? There we go. Last time, we'll get it out. Here we go. I promise that the other ones will not be as bad. It's just, always likes to fight. It's almost out. You'll hear it drop in a second. There it goes. All right, we got it off. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. This cage damage that happens when you keep pulling these off and on. So, yeah, you can see how it's like deformed. The cage can only withstand so much. So it's completely understandable why I destroyed a brand new bearing, because I pulled it off a couple times. But the whole point why I was trying to get this bearing off this pinion, even though I'm not going to use the pinion, is I got to measure the shim that's back here and see what the factory one was assembled here. So that way I have a basis of what I'm up against here. So we'll go ahead and put this over here for now. We'll grab this piece of wood because I use it for mocking things up. And we'll go to the diff here in a minute. Diff housing. Okay, so here's the old pinion that we're not going to use. Here is its crush sleeve, and here's the old bearing. Now again, these are great press tools, so what I do, I'll just show you right now, is I come over here to the trash can, let me get this camera adjusted, and I'll just cut off the cage. You can do that with some dikes here. Oops. And you just cut off the cage and you can keep the inner bearing race, and it's a good press tool. Yeah, and these metals are kind of thick, but you can definitely fight me pretty good. Maybe I'll do this later off camera, but that's how I got the other ones off. Like you can see this one right here. You just snip it and it comes right off. So I'll do that later for that guy. I just wanted to show. Okay, let's go get the differential housing and get that on my oil drain so that it can be draining overnight. Probably got a little bit of a puddle right here, not much, but yeah. So we'll go ahead and actually let's get the races out of here since we got it. Okay, so you got two races here. You got an inner and an outer, and we need to get the got a sliver here. We need to get the races out of there so we can put new races in there and get going on that. And I have a certain tool set for that. They make punches specifically for getting races out. So if we flip it inside, you'll see you got two races. You got one right here and another one down in there. So we'll get the small one out first, and actually the bearing for the pinion is still in there, and that comes out as one unit. So over here is my, these are all hardened steel discs for driving out races. That's all it's for. So I know from just working previously that a 60 millimeter is exactly what I need. So how it works is you have your drive tool here. There's an O-ring that essentially just holds the disc in place, and this is just like a cap that just keeps it all in one place here. And what you do is you just set that down in there, and if you can see, this diameter, this OD is the same OD roughly as the race down there for the bearing. So you put it right down there and you just hammer away. So let me go get a hammer situation going on there, so I can show you how to drive it out. But I also have to change the battery in the GoPro. So let me get that done real quick, be right back with you. All right, so I used this sledgehammer and it broke off years ago. It's a great, you know, like spacer, you will, or like a drive. So you're gonna hear some bangs here, but what you do is you just simply hammer away. And I think it's out. We'll give one more good tap just to make sure. Yeah, I think that was it. Now the last thing in there is the pinion seal that's holding it all in there. So what you do is kind of give it a good old love taps here. Just inspecting it. It's kind of fighting me a little bit, so we'll have to kind of give it the old hee-ho here. And that pinion bearing fighting me, so let's do something else real quick. Let's go get my 2x4 blocks, so we can just raise this snout up a little bit, and that'll be all that we need. Let's get the dirty ones. This will get it out rather quickly. It's starting to rain outside. All right. The only problem I have with doing this is like getting it to sit still. There we go. So it's at a weird angle now, but it'll work. So let's get the drive back down in there. Get my little extension here. Reset it. It's coming, it's just fighting me. Yeah, I can feel the seal starting to pop out now. All right, that's all out. Cool, so we got the front pinion seal bearing and the race out, I believe. Race is almost out, but here's the pinion seal. So there's that. Got the replacement behind me. So here's another good bearing to use as a press tool once I separate the cage. And the race is almost out. I can kind of see it in there. And actually, we don't need to have the wood anymore. Cool, so let's get that the rest of the race out of there. There we go. All right, so that's out. There's the old race. And I tell you, when you remove it correctly, there's like no marring. You could, I mean, you won't reuse this. I'm telling you right now you won't, but it's still in perfect round shape. But these are great for ball joint removals and anything else you need to use for a hydraulic press. So there's one more race in there. It's that guy, that one. And then after that, we will pull the other two seals out, and those are really easy to pop out. But let's get that other race out of there. And the downside about this race is you can't use a similar drive. You can't use these. On these housings you have, let me get my chisel here. You have these little like square indentation, like notches. You can kind of see one up here for the top race, which I didn't have to use that. But the only way to get the other one out is through the notches down there, and it's kind of a back and forth. You hit it one side, you move to this side, back and forth, but then it comes right out. So let's get that punched out real quick. Those differential shims don't want to stay put. Almost got it out. Almost out. It just takes back and forth. There it goes. All right, so that's how you get the inner race out. The big guy right here, quite a bit bigger. And yeah, you can definitely see why you mar it up a little bit, but you're not supposed to reuse these. So now for me, this is a good tool for my press. Got a good pile of them going on over there now. All right, so like I said, let's get these seals out, and I just use the same pry bar, and you just kind of, this one's kind of a big pry bar, I should use a smaller one, but you just get in there like that, and you just kind of pry it out there. And like I said, this is too big of a pry bar. It'd be easier if you had a smaller one. I might have to go get it. There it goes. You just pry them out. Throw that away. Let's get the last one out there. There it goes. That was easier. All right, got the seals out. So now, for all intents and purposes, this is just a housing. But you know what? We got those bushings. What I'm going to do is not do those right now because it's already dripping. It's getting everywhere, the housing. So I'm going to go ahead and let this sit overnight and get all the remaining fluid out of there. Just let it drain. But and then after that, we'll pressure wash it, get it ready for install. When I'm all done, I will spray paint it black and make it look brand new with new bushings and everything, but I'm not going to bother spray painting it until everything's done and ready to go, because you're going to be scratching it up. You're going to be, you know, tossing it around basically on the bench. Then once it's ready to go, I'll spray paint it, put the cover on it, and install it in the car. So let's go ahead and get this. Let me get the diff cover out of there. This old diff cover, the smooth covers. I don't know why Nissan does single stud covers, but cool. So we'll let that sit overnight. Just let it drain, and then I'll get back at it another day. These gloves are soaked with gear fluid, so I'll just toss these gloves. But that's it, guys. Actually, before I call it quits, let's take a look at that pinion bearing. Not the pinion bearing, I'm sorry, the pinion shim. And like, yeah, just looking at this right there. So I remember earlier I couldn't identify the number. It's 4714. So you do a 47 divided by 14, that'll equal 3.3. I just couldn't see on the ring gear there because it was just dirty and mucky. So you got this little shim that's underneath the pinion housing, and it's just kind of pressed on there. It's twisting. Let me adjust the camera so you can see how it moves a little bit. The only way you get it off is kind of, there it goes. So you get that bad boy off. And then you got to measure it. Man, that's gross. Look at that. That is like nasty, sludgy. And just for records, you know, there's a bevel to the shim. I'm not sure if you can see it on the camera here. There's a bevel right there. The bevel goes face down towards the pinion. I'm not sure why it matters. That's what it says to do in the factory service manual. All right, so let's get the micrometer. Then once I measure what it is, I'll just write it on there, and then I'll look it up in the factory service manual, and I'll put the number on there. So this one is, I measure it 3 times and see what the average is. So I got 0.130. Reset one more time. Yeah. Basically 130. Yeah. All right, so I got 0.130, and yes, I can write that number down on there, but there's actually on the factory service manual, which I have on my phone, there is a part number guide that you would have for that. So let me go pull that up real quick, what that is. I downloaded it just the other day. All right, so here's the factory service manual. On the very bottom of it, you have all these part numbers and the service guides here. So 0.130 right here is thickness, supposedly part number 9, if you can see that. So we got thickness is 0.130, or it could be 0.1295, which could be number 8. But what's funny is I actually bought number 8 and 9. I'm not sure if you can see that there on the camera. So let me measure a couple more times just to make sure. So that's a really small, minute difference there. But let me switch over to millimeters and see if I can get 3.29 or 3.32. Let's see if I can get a more accurate way that way. So let's try that again real quick. We'll switch over to millimeters. Maybe I can get the base number that way, which that gives me some hopeful impressions here, as that wasn't too far off from where I thought I should be. So I'm getting 3.29. Let's just do a couple more times there, average it out. 3.29. Let's make sure. Sorry, that one kind of messed up. Let's try that again. Yeah, 3.29, cool. So 3.29 is, let's go back in there. Where was I? 3.29. So that's part number 8. So I just put number 8. So you see the sequence of part numbers here. So I got the part number, and then 0, Charlie 008, all the way through 15. So that's definitely number 8. So what I'm going to do with the Sharpie is I'm just going to write 8 on here. Kind of. That's a blurry 8. Let's just wipe it off and redo it real quick. Okay, 8. And then I'll keep it with this shim, or with the crush washer. So, I mean, if I was to use this shim with the 3.54, I could technically reuse its crush sleeve, so long as I bring the torque specifications as far as the preload exactly to the factory spec. I could technically use this, but if you walk over here and you see, I have all my other ones for my measurements. So I have 0, 1, here's a 7, here's a 4, and here was a mock-up one of a different test shim that was something else I was trying to mess around with. So these are my used shims. I have new ones over there. So now I have an understanding of what I'm going to do. So for me to figure out where I'm going to start with, basically what I'll do is I'll get the shim here, or the pinion, I'll measure its height and compare it to the 3.54 height of its pinion. And if there's a significant difference, I'll do the varying math difference with, and this one came with a 4 as far as the factory, at the factory. So I'll do some math to figure out where I need to be. Now it's not gonna be exact, but it's gonna get me in the ballpark, and then I'll figure out which direction I need to go as far as the pinion depth. But I'm good for now as far as a stopping point for the night. I'll let the diff leak what little is left, and we'll go from there. But yeah, this is all fun. Too bad about the bearing separator tool being a piece of crap, but it works for its intended purpose, and this is pretty much garbage. I don't like those slim or smooth diff covers. All right, guys, I will get back to this video in a day or two, and we'll make this all just one good round video. Thanks, guys. All right, here we are the next day. Like I said yesterday, we put the differential here in this oil drain, just letting any remnants of oil fall down in it. I went ahead and after the video I sprayed a can of brake parts cleaner all around the housing to clean off anything, just to let a little soak and drip occur. It looks a lot better. So before we pressure wash it, which is the next steps, I'm going to go ahead and do something else, which is let's go ahead and get the RTV cleaned off the surface here from its you know, the cover, or the diff cover. And then a good practice here is, even though I doubt the cover had ever been removed from factory, you want to inspect the holes here to make sure that there's no like RTV down the threads. And if there is, you just want to run a tap through it. And I'm just looking here, I don't see any sort of RTV that went down with the bolts on these bolts here for the cover. So we're gonna skip a step. Normally what I do is I run a tap and just clean the threads out. It will just pull any old RTV. And that way I know I'm not gonna bottom out the bolt. But in this case, it looks really clean. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and get this old RTV cleaned up and removed. And then from there, we'll spray another round of brake parts cleaner inside. You can see that's a little bit greasy in there. And then we'll call it clean from there. So I have a gasket scraper. Yeah, let's go get the gasket scraper. And then I'll just do a light hand brush it, wire brush it to get the rest off. But let's get my gasket scraper. And I use a traditional razor blade gasket scraper. These work pretty well, I like these. I've had this for probably 20 years. This one, I just replaced the razor blades. So it works out pretty well. Let me get the little stool out here. So, like I said, you know, you just want to just kind of scrape the old RTV off. No need to get super aggressive. You just want to remove it. Let's get the camera adjusted here. And I'll tell you, just through conversation here, the older R200s, like from the Z31 and even I think the S13, even the Q45, I'm not mistaken, those use a paper gasket, and those tend to, over time, the paper gaskets will start to leak because you know, the material will either absorb the oil and start sweating it, and you know, but eventually Nissan started using RTV for the diff covers, which I think was a good move, because the RTV tends to last a whole lot longer. So if you're doing this on an older R200 from like a Z31 or there around, you're gonna notice that's a paper gasket. Now those are a little harder to clean the surface because it's like those get cemented almost to the surface. So do the best you can with a razor blade, and you might have to get like a wire wheel to get the rest. The R200 housing's cast iron, so it can take a wire wheel pretty well, but the diff covers are aluminum, so you don't want to go too crazy with a wire wheel against an aluminum cover. They have those nylon wheels for gaskets, for scraping gaskets, and those work really well. And even use that on a cover or a diff housing like this, it would work out pretty well. And I have some of those. I might, depending on how nasty this gets, but this is coming off pretty well. So the idea with the razor blade scraper, even if you're using like a razor blade in your hand, you want to get like as much of it off as you can, and then finish it off with a wire brush or a wire wheel. I'm going to use a wire brush just because I deem this pretty small for a, you know, gasket scrape for an RTV. So just trying to get the big stuff knocked down. Get the inside. The inside might have a little bit of a carryover that you don't want to get dislodged and have it circulate through your bearings or the actual diff itself. Won't be good. So I think We're looking pretty good to get to the wire brush now. Let's do one more walk around. That's looking pretty good. So let's go wire brush. Sorry about that. And we'll just go at it very carefully. I'm not pressing too hard, it's just more of the continuous back and forth. You know, with a wire wheel or a nylon wheel, it wouldn't take much effort to do this. But you can see, just like the 30 seconds of cleaning there, that it did a pretty good job removing the RTV. Yeah, this is coming off pretty good. I now already cleaned the Z1 diff cover I'm going to use. That one's already ready to go. So this one, just got to clean the housing here. Got a little bit of RTV up there in the corner. Let's get that off. Almost gone. Like I said, it doesn't take much effort. You just, a little bit of persistence here and it comes right off. And there we go. Looking good. About almost done here. Now, if there is any RTV that falls in the threads, you got to make sure to get those out with a pick, or just, you know, you can use an air hose or something to get it out. So there's a little bit I can see right there, and I'll try to pick at it. But you just don't want too much crud going down there. There is some paint thinner you can get, like aircraft paint stripper, something that really strong. That actually can soften up RTV pretty good, by the way. But I think in this case, the RTV is pretty fresh-ish. It's not super old, so I don't think I need it. Some RTV remains here in the little pry bar hole. You just kind of work it out. And again, as in my other videos suggested, it's never a race to do things fast or half-assed. Take your time. Because you want to make sure you do a good job. Cool, that's looking pretty good. Let's inspect these holes here. A little bit of RTV in there, nothing crazy. I think I can just get that with the wire brush here. Yeah, there it comes. That one's clean. Let's do one more on this one. That one's clean. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. I think we're pretty much ready to go here. Let's just do one more little exterior review, make sure there's no... All right, so this is clean. Now again, I'll just say this one more time. If you've removed the cover a couple times, there's a good chance you have buildup inside of these holes, and you just got to make sure that they're not built up, because you can cause a major problem if you bottom out the bolt with excess RTV or other junk in there. So once you clean it out, you might want to immediately throw away the scraps before it gets back into your project. All right, so now what we're ready for is, let's get the diff over outside. I got my little Amazon cheapo electric pressure washer. I do have a nice gas one. It's pretty heavy duty, but there's really no need. If you're just cleaning a part like this, that's not like super caked in nastiness. So it'll do the job. So first things first, before you do the exterior, get the interior cleaned up. Let's got some brake parts cleaner here. And the idea is let's get things kind of soaking with brake parts cleaner. Now this diff was so clean to begin with, I don't think it's going to be much of a nastiness. Older diffs, like a Z31 diff, I imagine you'll be in there with a toothbrush trying to get the crud out from there. This one's really super clean. So, got no real complaints on this guy. Let's flip it over. Let's get those fins. One more spray, because there was a bunch of like dirt collected, presumably from just a car driving, you know, collecting goose grease, as I call it. All right, and these brake parts cleaner cans, they don't last terribly long, do they? All right, that's about it. Okay, so we're gonna let that soak in there for just a few minutes, and then we'll go ahead and we'll use the pressure washer to clean the rest out. So I'll be back here in a minute. All right, it's been a few minutes, so let's go ahead and clean it. And again, my electric pressure washer does a really good job for what it is. If there was nastiness, I would probably bust out the higher PSI gas one, but this will do more than enough for what we need to do. So it's also pretty quiet too. All right, so let's go ahead and dump this. Now, all you environmental freaks, this is brake parts fluid. Yes, I get ozone stuff, but you know what? It's going to evaporate in like the next few minutes anyway, so it's not going to like hurt anything. But if you want to argue with me, go right on ahead. It just is what it is when you're working on cars, guys. All right, so let's go ahead and clean it out. Now, just looking, it's not terribly bad there. What's interesting is like inside the diff cover, it's like black. It looks like it was painted black. I don't know if that's just how it is from factory, but even the 350Z was like that. But I don't see much nastiness in there, so we're just gonna give it a quick spray down, and hopefully I don't get too wet from doing this. Here we go. And it's not like you're trying to get this thing looking brand new. You're just trying to remove any grime or grit, right? You're trying to just simply dislodge it and get it out of there. So we're not going for like eating surface clean, but damn near close, I guess. Go ahead and do the other side. get it on its back here, or its base, and get the top done. Okay, I'm calling that good. The idea again was just to get all the buildup of any grease or sludge from driving and get it knocked down. So now we can bring it over to the bench. Let me get things kind of put away here, and we can look at installing, you know, bushings and getting the races installed for the bearings. But let's get that going. Actually, before I bring it in, I'm going to get my air compressor and try to blow out as much of the stuff as possible. So just so I'm not dripping a bunch of stuff in here. So if you have an air compressor and you're doing what I'm doing here, go ahead and spray out all the bolt holes to make sure that there's no water or, you know, any contaminants that may be in there. So okay, that's pretty good. Let's get the hose put away, get the air compressor turned off. All right, it's definitely a lot cleaner here. So let's review the bushing situation, and let me explain something. The compressor should turn off soon. All right, we've got a little bit of an oil mess right there. Let me clean that up. That's my new Ingersoll Rand 80-gallon dual stage compressor. I can't remember if it was a triple or dual. It's actually quieter than my last one, my Cobalt, which was a CH brand actually. All right, so check this out. Super clean in there. Now if you have access to like a hot tank chemical bath, that would have been preferred, but this worked out pretty well. I don't see anything in there. This is great. All right, so before I want to install races in there from the new bearings, let's get these old bushings out, and it's going to be, I'm going to try to use my press. It might be awkward because of the the fact that we need to kind of hold it and suspend it while using the press. But I've seen people use like a socket and our hammer situation to get these out. So as I mentioned earlier, some of these bearings from the old setup, you can most certainly use them as your pressing tool, which I will. So that's what we're going to do on this guy. So let's just walk this over to the press and see how this might work out. Hopefully it works out well. To kind of sidestep the mower here. All right. Camera adjusted. All right, let's see how I'm gonna arrange the setup today. Hopefully it works out pretty straightforward. And you can see like on the differential here, there's definitely a one side entry on here. Like you see this lip right here. So that means the bushing got installed this way. So that means you need to push that way to get it out. So again, we're gonna kind of figure this out as we go. Let's get that camera adjusted. Wondering if I might need to use blocks of wood or something here, kind of get it suspended. Or rather, if I just use a hammer to get this out, because I think I'm gonna use the hammer, guys. I don't know. Let's see. Well, maybe this will work. The problem is it's so loppy that it's hard to kind of hold it on a lift, or I'm sorry, on a press. So yeah, let me get something figured out for the hammering of this. We'll just do it that way. So give me a moment to get something figured out. All right, let's see if this works. Got a couple blocks of wood to kind of stabilize it. I'm guessing things are gonna shift, not to my favor. So we're gonna go ahead and try banging on this. I'll use my, my hammer riser situation here. Let's see if we can get that pounded out. Definitely moved, didn't it? But that one strike actually did a decent job moving it. So let me reposition the wood here, more like that. Here we go again. Yeah, I wish I had a better setup here. All right, so that one came out relatively easy. And again, these are like great. These bearings are amazing for pressing and hammering stuff. So that came out in one nice piece. So let's get the other one done. So we'll just do the reverse, move this around over there. And see about getting that like that. That should work out. Let's get that there. And that should do it as well. That was pretty easy. All right, all done. That was pretty easy, guys. So that worked out well. You can use sockets, I guess, but you're gonna risk damaging your sockets. I don't really suggest you do that. These are just trash. I'm not gonna even bother like saving these for anything. So cool, that was easy. So let's go ahead and let's get the races installed. And before I actually install the solid bushings I got for it, because I needed to explain to you, actually I might as well right now. Because this is not going into a 350 or 370, it's going into a Z31 that has a modified S13 subframe. I had to modify the subframe to accept a 350Z diff, and in doing so, I modified how it bolts up to the subframe. And now, if I was to run the bushings I got for it, let me get them out as they are. Let's throw the garbage away. Sorry about that. So if I was to run it how it is, and what they want you to do is they want you to have a bushing, you know, on both sides and have the collar on the exterior. Now the problem with that for my setup is how I have it designed is I need this surface to be flat up against the mounting of the subframe. And you can look at my old 350, I had to weld a flat collar and like grind it down to make it so it's flat. I have to do the same thing on this one. I can't have it be that much more material, because then the nose of the diff will kind of point downwards to the ground, and it'll give you an undesirable angle there. So what I'm going to do to rectify this, since there's no bushing that would work straight out of the box, I'll for sure use these and press them into the bottom as they should be pressed in, right? And then for the tops, with my bandsaw, it's going to be kind of dangerous. I'm going to cut the collar off essentially and press them in just as this needs to be as it is without the collar. So that's why I'm going to hold off, and I'm going to do that probably off camera because it's going to take a long time to get that done. But just to let you guys know, that's the plan. And then this bushing is for a 350Z or 370Z subframe, where they have, this replaces the factory hydraulic filled or liquid filled bushing that, so I don't need to use this. This is not going to be used. It kind of sucks because that was probably why this whole thing was like $100, this whole kit. So we'll just set this aside for now. But we'll go ahead and get the races installed. We'll start with the big guy in the middle first, as that was the last one we pulled out. So, all right, so you got your two bearings over here. These are Nissan OEM bearings. And the trick to using these, to getting these installed, is to use the old races that came out and to use those as your pressing tool, so to say. That way you don't risk marring up the race that needs to go into the diff. So let me show you how I do that. And again, these bearings are expensive. Like this one is almost $100 just in my hands, and the smaller one is about 80 something. So you gotta take your time, do things right, and don't repeat some of the mistakes that I've made. Put that aside. So here's the race, here's the bearing. So we're gonna save the bearing later, because we're gonna have a different bearing that we're gonna use to mock things up. And then once we get that mocked up done, then we'll put the real bearing on. So to install this, you don't have to, but it's never a bad idea to provide a little bit of just a thin coating of grease, like assembly lube, if you will, just to help promote it to go in without catching on any burrs and getting stuck at a weird angle. So you don't need to put much. Like I'm spreading this out as best I can. There we go. Just a thin coating, and it goes down like this, where the taper is inward, so the larger opening is facing towards the pinion. And so you get that like that, right? And then you get the old pinion race that came out, and you use this as your drive. So you kind of put it like that, right? And remember, I have those tools that has the punches over here. So let's go swap this out to the bigger disc, because we're going to use this in conjunction and set that like that to hammer that in. That's going to be my little solution to get that in there. So let's swap this out, but we'll keep this number 60 because that's the right size for the other one. A little bit slick here, my hands are greasy. Working with gloves. All right. Okay, so like I said, use the other race as your driving race. That way you don't mar up the new race going in. Like you can actually do this if you wanted to, and then use it like this. So that's fine as well. That way you'll be centered. I've done it both ways. It kind of really doesn't matter. So let me get my hammer and we'll drive it in nice and slow. Here we go. Let's just give it a good check to see how we're doing. Yeah, it's going in there, but it went in a little crooked. So what you want to do is correct it by hitting the edge that's not as high, right? So like this right here. Good old tap, a tap. There we go. I just fixed it. Looks better, but we got to keep going. So yeah, it keeps moving on me, but you just go in there and you correct it. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. You got to keep working at it. So let me flip it over now, because I think the problem I was having is that doing it the other way, it kind of moves a lot. So we're gonna go like this, and we're gonna give a nice hard strike. Just make sure we get that as centered as we can. Ready? It's getting there. And again, the purpose of checking it is to make sure you're not going in crooked, because that will cause a headache for sure. It's getting there. It just takes time and patience. You gotta just slowly get it in there. There we go. That was a good hit. Okay, let's get this back on. Yeah, it's getting there, almost there. We're gonna just do a walk with this guy. We'll just walk it around. All right, check that out. So it's looking almost there. There's like a tiny little lip. So now, let me just kind of get that edge knocked down a little bit. There we go. So now is when it's important that you use this, because now you're at the point where this needs to push it down past the top edge there. So you'll find that this will actually kind of almost get installed by itself, but You see what I'm talking about? Like, it seems like that's stuck in there, but it's not. It's just kind of kissing it a little tight. So we're pretty much done. Let me give a couple more whacks. And what you'll hear, I just heard it, it changes its tone when it's actually seated. It's more of like a hardened bell. So this is now kind of stuck in there. All you do is just give it a light tap on the side and it should pop right out. It should anyway, keyword. There it goes. So that's still usable, right? And that's in there all the way. You'll want to get your finger down there and check to make sure it's bottomed out against its recessed area. So, and then the last thing is check to make sure that you didn't mar any of the cone of the race, and it feels good. So let's do the other side now. Cool. So this one's a lot easier because one, it's more accessible, and two, my race punch actually has the right size to it. So same thing as before, just give it a nice thin film just to help convince it to go in. Not very much, just a little bit. So that was enough. All right, so you see how that works? And like I said earlier, we have the right size to begin with sitting here. And just like earlier, you got to use the race from the old one, which is an excellent drive tool, right? So just like that, check that out. Perfect. Let's just double make sure that everything's squared up. So we're looking pretty good. And did you hear that audible change? I did. And that tells me that it's installed all the way. Let me give it one more whack. I just want to make sure one more time before I retract the old race. Okay, so same as before, it's just in there, give a little tap and it knocks it out loose. So I know it's kind of hard to see in the camera, but you just want to make sure that you can confirm that they're installed all the way, which they are. I'm just checking. Matter of fact, I'm not sure if that top one is, whether or not. Let me flip it over and double check. Can't really tell. Let me just do a visual on that. So let's have you guys kind of take a look in there. I mean, yeah, it's installed all the way, both of them. So that's great. That's good. So we're looking good. So we're ready for bearings and all that fun stuff. So last night I was talking about trying to figure out which shim I should use on the 3.54 Pinion. And I was thinking about it. I was like, you know, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the 3.54 Pinion in with the original shim that came out of the other diff, and that was a number 4. I'm going to do that because that'll be my baseline measurement, and if it's wrong, it's wrong, but at least we'll know. And I'm going to go ahead and use the existing crush sleeve, and if it turns out that that crush sleeve is too far gone, we'll find out. But the whole point is we got to start somewhere, and we have to figure out what is appropriate for the initial setup. So you got to start somewhere, right? So we got my new bearings here. We're gonna go ahead and set these aside just for a moment. We'll have to use this new guy here, but the rear inner pinion bearing is the one that gets compromised when you're doing this a lot. So we're gonna set it aside for a moment. All right. So like I said, we're gonna get the old pinion. Here it is. This is the 3.54. And as I mentioned, I saved all the testings of the other setup. So here's the one that it was originally paired with this pinion. And let's just go give everything a quick wipe down. Making sure that nothing's gonna get nasty if this even does work out. Okay, so like I said, there's a lip there, a collar if you will. Can you see that in the camera? That goes face down on the pinion. Okay, and then the bearing goes on top of it. So here is the original bearing from the diff. Now in order for this thing to work, this is my mock-up bearing, and what I've done is taken my die grinder and I kind of cleared out a little bit of clearance in there, and this makes it so it slips right on, right? So it's no longer a press bearing, it's just a slip-on bearing. Obviously you don't want that for a continued use, but in the efforts of getting things mocked up, this is what you want to do. But this only works if both bearings are the same bearing. So this is an OEM bearing, and the brand is NSK, which is what Nissan uses. And the replacement bearing is also an NSK. They're both the same. So this will work. But yeah, you don't ever want to reuse a bearing like this. All you're doing is you're just setting this up like so. So I'm gonna close the garage door, turn off the hose real quick before we get too far. But let's get this set up here in a moment. Give me a second. All right, so we're back. So let's get that on there, the pinion shim. And even though we're not gonna run this bearing, I do wanna lube it up just a little bit, just to prevent any unnecessary binding when you start pressing the bearings or getting the preload set. I just don't want to mar up the race at all. So, but when you're definitely installing the new bearing, make sure you put some grease, not a lot, because you got to rely on oil to do it, but you just want to put a little bit of grease. So these crush sleeves, there's a larger end and a narrow end or smaller end. The larger end goes towards the base that covers the lip right there on the pinion. If you do the other way, you'll see that problem. So you got to make sure you put it on like that. All right, so what we'll do, we'll go ahead and get this in there. And remember, it's okay to use the bearing, the new bearing for this side, because it doesn't really get damaged the times you have to press it out and reuse it all the time. So it's perfectly fine to keep reusing it. So what you want to do, it's kind of a weird situation where you get to kind of support the front like this and get your pinion, slide it in like so, and get your bearing in there like that, and get your companion flange. Now, actually, before I go too far, the factory service manual actually says you need to press the bearing on, which is true. I don't recommend you use the flange as your press tool, because this is like a running part, like you don't want to mar that up. So before I go too far, let's maybe consider using one of the old bearings as the press. Now, maybe the one that we used to press it on might be a good fit. Actually, this would work, but I don't want to use it. I want to use a wheel bearing from the other side. So let's use this guy. This is an old differential side bearing. So you put it on there like that, and then you'll stack a couple the bearings to make sure it goes on. So let's go over to the press with this situation and get this set it up that way. So, and remember, you don't want to drop any bearings. So let's walk it over there nice and easy. Cool. All right, so first things first, for sure we have to lower the brace bar here. And then let me get that 4x4 because you'll want to suspend the pinion on top of it, this guy, as you press it down. All right, so like so, like that. I kind of feel like I'm forgetting something, to be honest with you guys. Let's go down one more. It's been a long day at work, I'll tell you that. That looks better. So you want to do that, and then yeah, just kind of thinking out loud again. Sorry. Let's go down one more and I'll show you why. A little back and forth going on. Here's why. You gotta have room for the bearings to be on. So this looks better. So you want to be like that, and then you put the diff on top of it, and the diff will rest right here, and then you put your stack of pressing races there. So very carefully, you don't want to knock the pinion over. So that's sitting there resting now, like that. And then you get your bearing, put it like that. Put it there like that. Just kind of just thinking out loud here, forgive me. There, I like that better. All right, so the challenge I'm seeing right away is that we do need to use probably a socket to help push it down. So we'll go grab that real quick. All right, so got the old bit bearings sitting like that. Got an old socket here. So we'll use that as our drive here. There we go. And you're not going crazy tight on this. You're just seating the bearing. If you go any tighter, you'll mess up the crush sleeve that, you know, if it was a new crush sleeve. So all you're doing is you're just getting that bearing. I'm not even applying much force here. You're just getting that bearing on there. And then when you do the preload, that's when things get tight. So I do it to the point where it feels like it's on there all the way-ish, and I back off. You don't want to go super tight. Okay, so that feels good. And then you just remove your old bearings here, the old races. So that one's, just gotta flip it over and knock it out. But now we're ready. Now we're ready to put the companion flange on. Yes, there's a seal that needs to go here, but I don't do that until I know I'm done, because the seal is a one-time install use part only. If you put the seal on, then later you determine you have to pull everything apart to redo it, then you got to buy another seal. So we'll do the seal very last, once we for sure know that the combination that we're using is a good combination. So let's go ahead and walk this back over to the bench. And we'll get the bearing out from there. Okay. So, trying to get that old get this old race out, the bearings out. So I like these because like you don't really damage anything when you're using them. So got the bearing in there, all is well. That's looking good. So at this point, you want to put your companion flange on there. Make sure there's no contaminants, which there was a little bit on there. A little bit of wood from the shipping crate when I got this. Let's go ahead and clean this out. That's better. All right, so you get that on there, and then now it should be loose. Hear that slop? That's good in the sense that you didn't go too tight during assembly of the bearings. You want the preload adjustment to be the reason why it gets tighter. So we'll go ahead and get the nut back on. Come on. All right, just making sure it's good, and it is. The threads are a compression thread, so at the end of the thread they do get tight to prevent the nut from backing off. At least it is on this 350 370Z setup. So it's supposed to be tight like this. Okay, before I go crazy on that, you set the preload up without the carrier, without the actual differential in there. And this is the part that hurts your back because it gets kind of labor intensive. And I'll show you how I do it. Not saying my way is the best way, but my way works. All right. So they make these Pinion tools that you bolt onto here, and it gives the ability to put like a breaker bar or some kind of a tool for you to do this. Now the problem with these things is that they're freaking cheap on Amazon. This was like 10 bucks. And it's already warped, so this will be like a single-use tool only. But it is what it is, and it'll work out fine. So you definitely want to get on tight, because if you don't, you can round, or not round out, but the holes for your companion flange can get out of round, and you don't want that happening. And it looks like I need to swap out the battery on the GoPro again. These batteries don't last very long now, do they? All right. All right, so let me go swap out the battery on the GoPro, and we'll do next steps from there. I'll be right back. Okay, so we got the Pinion flange tool installed. Got some, making sure that the Pinion nut socket will still fit. Now, like I said earlier, it's a bear to do this. So here's how I do it. I don't know of a better way, you know, if I was to not have a vise like this, because you gotta have something that holds it in place for you, because otherwise it is a pain in the butt to do this otherwise. So let me get this kind of where I like it. That's pretty good right there. So this is a nice vise I got. So you need to have it be stationary like this. You need to have something that holds the Pinion flange in place, which is what this whole bracket does. Now, here's how I have this. I got one breaker bar that'll be in here, wedged like this. Now, It's not ideal. I've seen other scenarios or other solutions. Now what I do is I get my little rope here just to kind of keep it at bay, just to kind of help it stay in one spot. And it works. Like, you don't need to go, you know, crazy on the tightening, but it definitely does a job of just making sure it doesn't pop out past the vise. Okay, now this is where my back will get mad at me for doing this, but what you do is you need to get this set to where you get the preload set. The preload specifications are between 24 and 28 inch-pounds of rotating force. So this nut is still loose-ish. There's still a little bit of tightening, so I'm gonna cheat a little bit and use the impact. And trust me, there's no risk of going too far with this, because you just want to kiss it till it gets a little harder. And that's good. And you can tell I haven't even gone too far. I know that because there's still significant slop. So that was perfectly safe to do that. Just don't go, you know, don't hold it down, go crazy. So I have two socket situations going on. One will be for me tightening it, and the other will be to check preload using an inch-pound old school indicator. Now you can use a dial indicator, but this is the type that was cheap on Amazon. It was like 15 bucks. And it'll give you your reading of inch-pounds. You see that? So when you get a little bit of resistance and torque, you'll get there. So the rotating preload needs to be right about there, right in the middle between 20 and 30. So 24 to 28. So try to aim for 26. So what I do is I'll tighten it, take everything off, slam this on, test it, go back and forth. So, and I told you earlier, we got shim number 4 in there. We're gonna get the preload set correctly, and then we'll have to put the diff in there with the shims we think it's gonna work, and it's a guessing game. Once you think you got it figured out, then you can start dialing in with via shims or changing the pinion shim and go back and forth. But setting up a differential with a different gear set, it's a guessing game where you start off with first. So, like I said, it's just time consuming to do this. And you just go back and forth. Periodically check, like you don't want to go too far to ruin your crush sleeve. But now I'm hitting resistance. So now I know that the bolts for the pinion is seated down all the way. So now at this point, when I go further, it's going to start compressing things. So before we go too far, I don't feel any slop. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this off, okay? And listen. Oops. I don't hear anything, and there's no slop, but I can tell that it's pretty loose. So just for a reference, we're gonna put this on there. We're gonna see where it's at. I'm guessing it's not even gonna register, and it's not. That's not even doing anything. But that's the idea, is you gotta go back and forth between tightening it, loosening, or taking everything off, and then checking your preload. Just back and forth, back and forth. So it's just kind of the nature of the beast, if you will. Get this back on there as it was. And yeah, the rope definitely helps just stabilize everything down in there. Having a hard time getting it in there. I'm not sure why the other day was so much easier, but maybe because the rope is just simply too tight. There we go. Come on. There we go. Yeah, it's just on a bit on the tight side, but it's fine. Okay, so here comes where you break your back. So you just want to tighten it a little bit, not much. And then once you start seeing a registration on the on your torque inch, you know, inch pounds, once you start feeling the resistance, then you know, like, you got to go really slow in the tightening. You go too far, you just wasted a crush sleeve. So this one's now registering, if I do it again, like at 5. So we got registration now. So that means we're getting there already, which is not bad. And it probably helps the fact that this is a used crush sleeve mated to this existing shim. So it's already been crushed, so to say. So here we go again. There we go. And like I said, it's tight. And you don't want to do too much. You just check it by hand, make sure things aren't binding. It feels pretty good. Check the preload. So now we're at like 10 or 12. Do it a couple times. Yeah, it's like 10 or 12. So we're definitely getting there. I tell you, the little rope trick, as comical as it seems, it really works. It makes it easier. All right, that might be it right there. I think I went too tight, actually. Feels too tight. We'll see. I think I went too far. So actually, that's like at 20. That feels almost there. Yeah, that's like 20. So we're pretty much there. We'll do it one more time. That should do it. They give you the range, right? 24 to 28, because it's really hard to get exact, precise. But in terms of what my eyes are saying, is like you just got to basically get it between 20 and 30, and then you should be within that range. There we go. All right, this is it. All right, that was probably it. Just adapter popped out. Okay, spin by hand, see how it feels. It feels tight. Bob's your uncle. Looks like it was it. So it's like at 26, 28. Yep, so that's done. That's within spec. So now what you gotta do is, now that we have the preload set right, assuming maybe that shim works out, it'd be amazing if that shim just worked. I kind of doubt it. At this point, you got to put the carrier in and test pattern and backlash and all that fun stuff. And if that was as successful, as easy as that, that would be amazing. But again, I don't think it's going to be that easy. I think I'm going to have to repeat this several times. But we'll see. Some long bolts. Okay, and let me just show you something real quick. So notice there was no damage to the holes. They're perfectly still circular. If you shove like a screwdriver or like an extension down there and you try to brace it up against the ears of the bushings, you're gonna put those out around, so please don't do that. So got that in there. Now you can take it out of the vise. And let's see if we can get lucky and see if see if we can get that diff in there and have the pattern just be perfect. I kind of doubt it. So like I said earlier, you have existing shims. We don't want to use the shims necessarily that came with it, only because they're spec'd for the pinion that was there and the center section. So what we need to do is I'm going to use the shims that came from the 350Z diff. I think they all dropped, so let me go grab those real quick, 1 second. All right, we're back. Got my shims all cleaned up. They were on the ground. Apologize for that. So here's the shims from the 350Z diff. I remember writing them down, which was from the drive or passenger side, so I got them placed accordingly. So what you got to do at this point, let's get the diff pushed back a little bit here. Maybe give the diff a little bit of support in case it teeters, which it probably will. There, that looks good. So yeah, you get the diff ready like that. Put your bearing cap like this on there, and now you can be cool and clever by maybe going like this, which I'm going to try to do, but you don't have to. You can put the shims in, you know, once it's kind of already partially sitting in there. So we'll try to be cool, and you kind of lift it up like this, and you just kind of let it roll in there. It's not going to go like, it's not going to go right where it needs to be, but it's going to be kind of close, and you just got to give it a little bit of what I call motivation to get where it needs to go. Now, what you're going to notice is that this needs to roll into the pinion gear, and if the pinion gear is resting to where it won't turn, it's not going to like accept it in there. So sometimes just simply turning the pinion as you push it in will let it seat pretty nicely. That way you don't have to get like a hammer and force it in, but sometimes you do. So you saw that I just kind of pushed it in a little bit, so that actually worked out. So you got these side-to-side shims there. It's kind of poking out. They do make specific, they're called differential shim drivers that are kind of like a curvature shape that you use to hammer it in. Now you can see where I made a mistake. Like you can see on the edges where they're kind of marred up because I was using a chisel earlier. Don't do that. Don't do what I did. What I ended up doing, if I can find it, one of the old races from the bearings, I cut out, which a small section of that curvature, and I welded a old broken extension on there, and then I grinded it to where it was the right circumference of the shim there. So now I got my own little pinion driver. These are kind of expensive though, for whatever reason. Like on Amazon, I saw prices ranging from like $30, $50 up to like $150 just for a tool like this. So if you want to buy the right tool, that's fine, but I just made my own and it'll work out just as well. So what you want to do is, it looks like the bearing's a bit high where the shim is, so let's kind of tap it down just a tad bit because it was higher than it needs to be. There we go. Same thing on this side. I'm not hitting it real hard, I'm just kind of just lightly tapping it. And let's get the camera adjusted. So like I said, you put the tool like that, and you just kind of drive it in like that. You see that? It's perfect. Just like that. It works out really nicely. And that way you don't risk marring it up like I already did. Those shims are not cheap. From Nissan, they're like $35 a piece or something high, or I can't remember. They're like stupid expensive. It's just like crazy of why they're so expensive. So you don't want to risk damaging it. So quick observation, I can tell that the diff is not fully in there. And now you can do it one of two ways. You can get a hammer like a mallet here. Don't use an actual metal hammer, use a mallet, and you just want to kind of tap it in various places to kind of get it fully seated. Or you can use the bearing caps to press it on. The problem I have with use a bearing cap to push it on is that you can risk damaging the threads if the holes aren't perfectly lined up. So I recommend just a mallet to kind of whack it in shape. And it's going in pretty good at that point. So I think we're good. It moved quite a bit. Let's put the mallet away. Let's give these a quick wipe down. I try to have the bolts go back from their originating location, just because it's best that way. So just giving this a quick wipe down, nothing crazy. So remember the markings, they're kind of rubbed off a little bit. There's the L with the directional arrow up. As I said earlier, these only go in one way. They're kind of cut and shaped to be size, directional specific there. Not necessarily size specific, but directional specific. So always hand thread bolts before you start even using a wrench or an impact or whatever. You don't want to cross thread. So trying to get those bolts just a little bit aligned there. I can feel it has a bite. Okay, let's do the other side real quick. Give it a quick wipe down. Wasn't too dirty to begin with. Okay. Now again, I'm not expecting that this be like ready to go in terms of backlash and the pattern. It would be amazing if it was, but I have little to no hope that that's actually going to take place. So, but even then we have to pull it apart anyway to get the bearing installed properly. So no matter how you want to splice or look at it, you gotta go back and forth. There's my 17, kind of find it. Looking right at it. So I'm not torquing these down with this. I'm just buzzing them on just a little bit just to get it going, to save some time. See how that, just to save some time is all. All right, barely holding it. Okay. And I just saw it cinch down a bit tighter in there. All right, so the torque range for this thing is, I believe, 68 to 72 foot-pounds of torque. So I will just do like 71, 72. Now before you even get tightening it, you want to visually or feel for the backlash. If there's no backlash after you just tightened it, you might as well start all over with Pinion or the shims, because it's just too tight. So you can hear the backlash. That's good. So we're kind of at a good starting point as it is. So let's go ahead and get this up to 72. Always zero out your torque when you're done using it. Oops. Come on, 72, where are you? There we go. All right, so let's get this torque down. You do side to side, and then when you're done, check all four again, because there's a good chance that as you're tightening it, it's going to seat even further. Let's adjust the camera there. So I'm definitely putting it on a lot more than what the impact just did, which concerns me because I feel like it's going to get tighter and we got the wrong shims. Just my observation here. But, and yeah, these things kind of rock back and forth without having a proper diff stand. Come on, 72. There it is. Yeah, still got a little bit of backlash, but I fear it's too much. But we'll just keep going. See what happens. Or not too much backlash, I'm sorry, too little backlash. I kind of got used to knowing what 5/1000ths felt like. There we go. Yeah, there's no backlash right now. Let me go ahead and see if it's just at a weird angle, the diff, and if we can get some backlash, because it's on there so tight that there's no point in continuing really. But let's finish getting this torque down. Let me just kind of speed this up a little bit. Maybe it was like not perfectly straight and centered, you know? So we'll see if doing that might give it a little bit of backlash. Here we go. Check the other side. Yep, so it got loose just because of the weird angle. Check again. It's on there too tight. So we're gonna have to do this again. All right, let's check for this visual. There is a little bit of backlash. All right, well, let's check for see what the backlash specification is on this, or what it's currently reading at. And we have to use a tool to do that. I got it right here. And I've been using it frequently on this setup, so it's just pretty much ready to go. So get the camera adjusted, sorry about that. So what I have here, it's magnetic based, and you put the indicator rod, the push little dial there, at the flat spot of the crown bolt there, which is a good spot. And what you do is you want to make sure that the backlash is on the coast downward, so you can hear. Let's see if I can do this. It's kind of hard with the fin diff cover action going on. Let's see if I can get some braces here. And you can put this back in the vise if you wanted to, you know, make it easier. It's kind of being a pain in the butt with this fins, but so listen for the backlash. Okay, so what you want to do is get it on the down, and then manually get the turn the indicator to where it will barely start coming down or start increasing. And again, I apologize, the fin housing is making this a little difficult, as I'm used to doing it a different way. So let me just try this, moving this again. way better. Yeah, it's very solid. Sorry about that. So what you want to do is manually twist the mount down to where it kisses the bolt, and you watch on the indicator, the needle will start to move a little bit. So let me adjust the camera so you can see. Maybe it's kind of hard for me to even see. And then you know you're ready to go to start looking at backlash. So I'm going to barely touch it to where it barely moves the needle. See, it went too much. So I'm going to slowly back it off to where it's like right under 1. Almost there. So I landed it at like, I want to get like right between 0 and 1. Like that. Okay. So what you do is you can either, you know, spin the face to B0 just like that. So you got to be between 4 and 6 thousandths. So 5 is where, you know, ideally you want to land. So it's like, wow, it's at 4 or 5. That is crazy. It's right there where it needs to be. It's on the tighter side, but in terms of backlash, that's within spec. That's pretty cool. That was a wild guess right there. Can you see that? All right, so that was just a stab in the dark, but I guess it's not too surprising. We used the shim that came with the 350Z and the 2 Pinion shims. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go ahead and put paste on the crown here, or I'm sorry, the ring gear, and we're gonna check the pattern, and I'll be tickled if that was it and we're ready to go. Like, I'll be surprised, but I don't think that's gonna be that easy, especially with my luck recently on this thing. All right, so and to do a proper engagement on the pinion, you have to have like a helper put some resistance on the pinion as you turn it. But we'll do that once I think I'm close enough. I'm gonna have my wife help me do that, but I'll get there when I get there. So I want to redo, yeah, there it is. Sorry to kind of have some there from working on it. So let me get some of the paper towel, a little bit of the crud out of there. Just a little bit of paper towel dust, if you will. Cool. All right, let's put some more compound on there. Oops. And like I said, this is just a stab in the dark to see if I'm even gonna get close on this. But I would be very surprised if it just worked out that way, you know? And by the way, if you guys ever get quoted for, you know, a shop to do this, like, please understand, like, what goes into doing this, you know? Like, I have my own equipment here, and it's not to say I have like the best equipment, but it takes time to set these up. And if you have the capability to do it yourself, all the power to you, but don't get mad at how much a shop might charge you, because it is time consuming. It's not rocket science, it's just time consuming. And you know, it just one of those things. All right, I'm just being very thorough about the paste here. Almost done. Got my fingers crossed, guys, that this is just like blind luck. So while I'm finishing up the last 2 teeth here, before you want to test pattern,
you got to make sure your backlash is within spec, because if you're too tight a backlash or too loose a backlash, your pattern's not going to be right. So if the backlash is close to spec, there's an assumption that you'll be close to the correct pattern on the engagement from the pinion. Now I'm hoping that the pinion shim I put in there was the right one. We're going to find out here in a moment. So again, I'm going to spin this by hand, and it's definitely not the right method. Is I need a helper to put, like you wrap a towel, I have a towel over there, you wrap it around the pinion, and you put some resistance, and that helps create a better test pattern. But right now I'm just going to do it by hand if I could. I'm going to put the axle shaft in there. I keep saying axle shaft, I mean axle stub here. So let's get that so you guys can see. So you just see one for now. All right, so it just feels tighter than I'm used to, but we'll see what that pattern looks like. And again, you want to spin it and then go backwards to get the coast. It definitely helps having a helper do this with you, because it gets a little hard sometimes. All right, so the pattern's back. So first impressions, the coast is on the heel side, which is what, you know, I'm not happy to see that. And the drive, let me get this kind of tipped down so I can see. So the drive actually ain't bad. It's down on the toe side, but I'm telling you, that's not bad. So my guess is we need to put a thinner shim on the pinion, and then and figure out the shim side to side. And I think that'll be good. Like that's a good stab in the dark as far as the first guess. And yeah, that ain't bad. I'm actually pretty pleased with initial guess there. So cool. But now we gotta pull it all apart and do it again. So I'm gonna take a break at this point and get some dinner. But it's one of those things, you just gotta go back and forth until you get it right. So, but getting it assembled as a first try, that's not bad. That's actually better than it was when I first pulled it apart. So, all right, well, I'll be back here in a bit and we'll try it again. All right, guys, I'm back out here in the shop. Like I said, I got some food in my stomach, had some dinner, and I went ahead and finished figuring out the pinion engagement. I got it dialed in, so it's essentially ready to go. I did have to go down to the thinnest shim available from Nissan. I call it 0. I forget the measurement that it was. But in doing so, I was able to get the pattern on the gear and the pinion to a satisfactory point. The Nismo GT Pro, I learned recently that itself as a differential, it has more of an aggressive contact pattern. And it took me a while to understand that. But now having learned that, it is normal for the pattern of the drive, if you see that, to be a bit like that, down low towards the toe, and then the coast is actually near up on the it's more centered actually on the coast. Actually, it's more, I'm not going to bother flipping it right now because I want to show you the backlash, but this is actually how it's supposed to be. So I was troubling myself for really no reason at all, but I got the backlash figured out. It's exactly at 5 where it needs to be, 5 thousandths. So it's supposed to be between 4 and 6 thousandths. So I got the indicator there slightly above the 0, just to make sure that I'm starting with no slack. So if you see here, if we put a little bit of a backlash measurement it comes to be right above 5. So it's pretty much exactly at 5,000. So right between 4 and 6,000. So backlash is perfect. The engagement's perfect. Everything's perfect for what it is. So now what we need to do is we need to go ahead and take it all apart again. And I got to put that real bearing in there, that new bearing, versus using the mock-up bearing. And once I get that installed, to get everything back how it was, and then we're going to spray paint it. Just give a nice good coat of black, gloss black from like Rust-Oleum paint, just a protective paint to prevent any more additional rusting. These are thick cast iron covers, or I'm sorry, housings. They're not gonna like disintegrate overnight, but it's never a bad idea that now you got everything taken apart, it's clean. Let's put a fresh black paint of spray paint coat on it. So that's what we need to do. So I'll go ahead and take this off now that we got the backlash figured out. It's exactly where it needs to be. That's good. I did have to play around with shims a little bit. It wasn't straightforward. And from there, like I said, let's go ahead and get the pinion bearing replaced, remove the mock-up bearing. And then, yeah, I think we're good to go here on this. So let me go ahead and start taking it apart so you can see everything. And I did obviously get the diff mounted in the vise. It was a lot easier getting things done onto it. You saw how much I was fumbling with it on the bench, but yeah, it was pretty straightforward after that. Like I said, I keep the bolts and the bearing caps as they come out, as they went in, type of deal. I mentioned earlier I use a pry bar, or I'm sorry, actually a crowbar, because I like the curvature of this to just essentially wedge it out. So you get it back in there like that, and you just give it a nice big, good old tug on it, and it'll, like that. You see that? So now it'll just come out pretty nicely. There we go. You don't want to like propel it outwards because you don't want this thing going flying and then all that work you just did ruined. So it's pretty much out now. Okay, so let's just gently pull it out, and I got to be careful with the shims because I don't want to misplace which ones are the right ones. So I got to be careful and put them down in such a way I know which one's which. All right, that one's in there still. Okay. So like I said, I'm pretty happy with the wear, the wear pattern. Let's get my shims put away. So this will be the driver's side. I'll just put that over here, I guess. Not to confuse the other one, which I kind of just almost did, but we're good. Yeah, it's this guy. Okay, so let's go ahead and get the pinion out one more time, and then we'll get that new bearing in there, and we'll be a happy camper with new bearings and having got the shimming done correctly. All right. So let's go ahead and buzz that the pinion nut off. And we're going to use a new crush sleeve, by the way. We're not going to reuse the other one, only because like I have a few new ones and I might as well use a new one just to have a peace of mind. So that's what we're going to do. All right, and we'll go ahead and get the companion or pinion flange off. Get it set up again. Okie day. Oops, wrong size. All right, so like I said, take everything apart to get the new bearings in there. Okay, pretty straightforward. Well, that's ready to go. So let's get it walked over to the press and get these, get the bearings replaced. All right, I got the diff mocked up here. Let's go ahead and get the pinion pressed out. Okay. All right. So this is a good bearing. This is the front pinion bearing. I just want to set it aside in case it drops or something. And let's get the pinion out. Okay. So like I said, we're not going to use this crush sleeve. That one's pretty much trash. Here is the 0 washer spacer, right? I've got a 0 on it. Pinion shim. So we're going to use that one. And let's go get these. Kind of like this, actually. There we go. All right. Let's go, actually, I'm sorry, kind of going about this the wrong way. I got to reset this all up to press on the new bearing. So let me get this whole arrangement done and get ready to press on the new bearing. So I'll be right back. All right, so I got everything set up here. Got the pinion sitting on top of the new bearing to be pressed on. And we got that 0, part number 0 shim there. Got a race down there to be the press tool, if you will, and we're just going to go straight down and press the bearing on. So just get down to it. Okay, so this is if I remember correct, this is kind of a decent press type of activity where you can feel a lot of resistance. Now, there's a lip at the bottom of the pinion as it comes down. You don't want that lip to catch either the press tool or cylinder you're using, or the press bars down at the bottom, press plates. So you gotta be careful. Like, you don't want to mar up the metal. So just, if you don't feel it hit anything all the way down, then you're good. But if you feel any bit of resistance, stop and recenter it. See, right there, I felt something. So let's just stop for a second and see what's going on. Because I think it's something's catching. So let's just recenter it. Make sure we're good to continue, which I think we are. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and just put my little hammer head here as a spacer. There we go. There it goes. Okay, so it definitely seated all the way down. So that felt pretty good. So new bearing is on there. Looks good. And like I said earlier, you want to apply a thin layer of grease as like assembly grease to just prevent any, you know, accidentals, whatevers. But that's looking pretty good. All right, so as I mentioned a minute ago, we're going to use a new crush sleeve. There's the part number from Nissan. So let's go ahead and get this opened up. And like I said, it only goes on one way correctly. You'll find that the base ring needs to go like that. So again, if you have it backwards, it'll catch that top lip, and you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to have it go down like that. So let me get this, the arrangement here ready to have the pinion to go in and press into the outer pinion bearing or the front pinion bearing. So let me get that set up. All right, so we got a 4x4 wood supporting the height or the pinion here, and then the diff is suspended by the bearing itself. So at this point we need to get the top pinion bearing, and this has already been lubed up. So this needs to go on like that. And this is the arrangement we had before. So we'll just do the same thing. Cool. So this will work just fine. Let's get this centered a little bit better. There we go. All right, let's get this other pinion bearing pressed on. Okay, looking good, feeling good. Actually, let me center something. I just see that the race is not centered. Let's just do that again real quick. There we go. All right, that's looking better. And again, you just get to a point where it stops. You don't want to prematurely crush that sleeve. So there, it stopped, it's on there. You expect a little bit of play, that's normal. So at this point, we're done with the bearing installations. That should be it. Now before we put the companion flange on, we gotta get that seal put on. So let's walk this back over to the bench and get that seal put on. Yeah, just thinking what I should probably just bring over all my stuff here. Okay. Cool. Get the camera adjusted. All right, so now, like I said, let's go ahead and get the pinion seal on, and then we're gonna get the companion flange on. And after that, we're gonna spray paint everything and let it dry overnight. And then after that, we'll put the outer seals on for the axle stubs, and then we'll start putting everything else back in the car or getting ready for that. So, like I said, we have new seals for it. Here's the part number from Nissan. And what's interesting is that the bearing or the seal here is actually a different part number from 350 to 370. It looks a little bit different, but it all functions the same. Is that the right? Maybe this is the wrong one, actually. Huh, I think I had the wrong seal. I think this is the 350 seal. And where before I had the, I should have ordered the 370. Let me just confirm real quick that I think I got the wrong seal. Let me just look at the part number real quick. Be right back, give me a moment. Actually, I was right. It was the right part number, so false alarm. So I'm looking up at a 370Z right now. There is the lookup code 38189. And that is the pinion seal, and that's the part number I have, ending in P0117. So that's the correct part number. It just looks different for whatever reason, so false alarm there. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get this seal installed. I just thought it just kind of went in kind of weird. So yeah, it still feels weird. But anyway, there is a hardened surface right here. And what you want to do is, again, these races are amazing for driving in seals and other things, right? So let's find a pinion, not a pinion, I'm sorry, a race that could potentially fit that. I'm kind of having a problem lining one up, but let's see if this one will. No, not that one. Well, I'm thinking, yeah, that one, is that one gonna work? Yeah, that one will work, but just barely. It's kind of overhanging it a tad bit. So how I'm gonna do that is we'll use this race on top of it, and then I guess let me get a piece of wood and just strike it like that, and we should be good for that seal. So here's one right here I dropped a moment ago. Okay, so set it like that on top, and then we will simply hammer it in place. There it goes. Yeah, it definitely went in there a bit. So definitely a false alarm on it being the wrong seal. It definitely is the right one. But I just want to kind of got my concerns about that being seated all the way. Again, it's kind of just talking out loud here as I'm walking through this. Let's I wonder if that's going to be okay to do it like that. No, not really. Here's what we're going to do. We'll just get my little extension here and kind of just drive it around it. Yeah, it's definitely going in more. Yeah, it needs to go in quite a bit more. So let me, let's reset this real quick. That wasn't the right way. It's weird, it's different on the 350Z. It's a different seal. Kind of caught me by surprise right there, but I gotta find a idea of how to get that down in there. Oh, no, this will work just fine. What am I talking about? There's a hardened base down there. Yeah, this will work just fine. There we go. Yeah, that's way better. My bad. So, get that out. Everything look okay. Yeah, for the most part, looks good. Looks like it went all the way around, nice and flat. So that's installed, good. And I'd like to just do another quick sanity check on that. So I'm gonna go to an extension and just kind of tap around and just feel for the same hardness all the way around. So let me go get my extension real quick. Okay, so what I got here is just a quarter drive extension, and all I'm doing is just audibly listening to make sure that it sounds the same all the way around. That way you know it's seated all the way. Cool. So, yep, that's all done. Feeling good about that. And like I said, we gotta get that that preload done next. So let's get the flange on here. And before I do that, I want to show you how this seal works. So you got multiple lips here, and how this outer lip works is when you get this smooth flange going in here, it'll actually glide in properly. So you don't have to worry about the lip catching in properly or not. It's kind of like a one-directional lip seal. So it's pretty cool and slick how they did that versus the old ones. You have to make sure you get it in just right. Okay. Now remember, loose is good. That means you didn't screw up the crash sleeve right out of the way. So let's get the preload done for the last time. Hopefully this plate will work one more time. It's getting pretty bent. I'm wondering though if I'll have to get a extension from like my floor jack or something to make it so I can tighten this, because it is literally a bear to get this on. We'll find out here in a minute. And again, you want to get this tight, because if you don't, it's gonna get those holes out around for either your differential, or I'm sorry, your drive shaft companion flange. Come on. Bit of grit on the threads or something. Okay. Let's get preload done. All right. So making sure it still goes in. I tell you, that rope idea, you think it's funny, it probably is, but it works just fine. Come on. Okay. And I already forgot to put the nut on, but no big deal. I'll do that right now. All right, let's go ahead and get that going. Still loose, so don't worry, I didn't go all the way. All right. So get my tools ready for this. So this small inch-pound torque wrench. I have to use several adapters so I can get up to that size. Okay. Here we go. This is where it breaks my back. New crush sleeve, never been crushed, and it's it is definitely a bear to do it. And then what I'll do, I'll measure once that rattle goes away, once that looseness. Let's check that real quick. Nope, so loose. Keep going. Check that one. Yeah, let's just check it. Never hurts to be a little thorough here. I can tell you it's super loose. Yeah, still got the rattle. Okay, keep going. All right, how's that one? Still got the rattle. Keep going. Okay. Still loose. This is a new crush sleeve like it, so there's a lot of crushing that has to go on, if that makes sense. Let's check that one. Definitely tighter, but not there yet, I can tell you. Let's see. Yeah, not even metering yet. All right, we're getting there though. Okay. All right. And the reason why I'm going back and forth is to, if there's any binding, you want to loosen the binding. So I feel it's tight. My worry is I went too far. Maybe not, we'll find out. Nope, that's like a 10. Yeah, about 10, 11, so we're almost there. Okay, so now we're so close, you gotta make sure you slow it down. Go nice and easy. All right, so that was I was just, if anything, a small little kiss to that. So, back and forth. If there's any binding, take it out. But that feels right. Okay, I think that's it. Let me put the wrench down. Let's take a look here. It's a bit low. It's like 22. It needs to be 24 to 28. Let's check it one more time. Yeah, I think we're a bit low. Yeah, we do one more kiss and then we got it. So one more time here. Okay. Ever so slightly of a tighten here. Here we go. All right, that was just a hair. It wasn't much at all. Let's just see where that put us. All right. Make sure there's no binding. Preload is, let's see. I think it's right there, guys. I think we got it. Just wondering if I should go a little more, if anything. No, it's like a 26. I'm happy with that. Yeah, that's perfect, 26. Cool, so that's done. So we got that part done. Now let's get the center section back in there. And we will spray paint it tonight, let it dry overnight, and then put bushings in tomorrow. The seals for the axle stubs, and put the diff cover on it, and then we're done. A lot of work to go into rebuilding a diff. So, but I think it came out pretty good though. And I tell you what, I bought this flange just for this job, this project, and it's so warped. I'm probably gonna send it back to Amazon and ask for a replacement, because this is ridiculous that one job got it this messed up. So, but that's what's good about Amazon, I suppose. All right, so this is good. Cool. So now what we need to do is put the actual center section in. And I really like the way I had it before, where I had it up like this. Made it super easy. All right, let's take a look at that angle. Yeah, that's a solid clamp there. So let's go ahead and firmly get that on there. Cool. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get the diff in there. And I just want to remeasure my bearings or these shims real quick, just to make sure that these are the right ones I want to roll with here. And I believe these are, yeah, that's that one for sure. And this one should be the 1.0. Yep. Cool. Got the right shims. Go ahead and set that one in there as it's easier at that angle. Okay. Now, I don't know if I told you this, but you gotta watch your fingers. You don't want to pinch your fingers. These are kind of heavy. And, you know, it's just a game of getting things lined up right. But that's why we have that cool little nifty tool I made to help get that shim in there as it should. See how this works? You got the shim and the bearing cap right there, or the bearing race. So okay, it's not perfect yet, but we're getting there. And a block of wood to help drive it in. And looking good. Sometimes they fall into place, and other times you have to kind of give them a reason to go in. right, looking good. Okay, that's pretty much it. And again, I mean, this was exactly what I just had pulled out, but you should have backlash. You should be able to audibly hear the backlash, and you do. So that means it's not binding anywhere. So this is all good stuff. So I don't think it's in all the way yet, but we'll let the bearing caps finish it off for us. So let's get those in. Before you do that, you might want to give it a quick wipe down to remove any of that like wood dust from hammering just now. Just anything that may cause a little bit of debris. There we go. That's looking good. Okay. Go ahead and cinch it up and torque it down to 72. Cool. And let's get that torqued, and now I haven't changed the torque wrench, but let's just verify it's still at 72. 72.5, it went up a little bit just because of how torque wrenches work. Yeah, we'll stop at, we'll do it at 72. There we go. Oh, it went up again. There, perfect, 72. Okay. Okay. And just double check it one more time. All right, this one's done. So, like I said, we need to get the seals installed, but I kind of want to, I'm not sure. You know, I'm gonna go ahead and get the seals installed right now, and then I'll just stuff it with paper towel, because I need to spray paint to get this rust taken care of. But if I spray paint it how it is, even if I put paper in here, I don't want any spray paint getting inside here. So let's go ahead and get those inner seals installed. I'm okay with seals getting a little bit of spray paint on the outside of them. That doesn't really do anything. You obviously don't want spray paint on the inside, but on the outside it's perfectly fine. So kind of just get it mocked up like that. And I tell you, these things are awesome once you find a good variety of sizes here. Yeah, it was a bit tight. Pretty sure that was the one I used last time. Actually, hold on. This is the one. Yeah, this is it. There we go. Bingo. Sorry, it kind of moved on me a little bit. Getting there. It's kind of awkward at this angle I'm at. So I think at this point, I'll do it this way. Fighting it weirdly. All right, so it's on there. That looks good. And I feel comfortable just stuffing a wad of paper towel in there and then spray painting it so that the paper towel will absorb any excess spray and not go inside. All right, so I got the other side to do. Same part number. Let's get the seal ready. All right. All right, so what I'm gonna do is bring the differential down and set it on its side, but it's bloody heavy, so it's gonna be kind of a hassle. Just being nice and careful here. There we go. All right. Okay, same deal applies. Put the seal kind of in position. Oops, that must have been what happened initially. Yeah, I think I'll just let the hammering self-center it. Okay. There it is. Not quite flush. Let's do it one more time. There it is. Looks good. All right. Cool. Well, that's that. So now what we're going to do is we need to wipe it down and get rid of my greasy fingerprints all over it. We'll use just paper towels and brake parts cleaner, and then we're going to spray paint it. And yes, we need to get this side covered up in such a way that nothing gets inside, and I have an idea of how I'm going to do that. So what we're going to do here is just simply go like that, and that should prevent any excess spray from coming in. I'll flip it over and do the same thing. Okay. Cool, that works. All right, so my idea for, you can't necessarily have this stand like this really, because you're gonna have the bottom exposed. So what I was thinking about doing was getting the crate box that came with it and just having it be like the little paint booth for it, so that it has a place to kind of rest. So if I do something like that and have the ring gear go down in there, that'll work out just fine. So that's what we'll do. But let's go ahead, as I'm walking back and forth here, let's wipe it down one last time, and we'll go ahead and take off my gloves so I don't continuously move the grease around. So, you know, and after having pressure washed it, it's really easy to identify the areas of which I touched, because you can see greasy handprints or whatever else. But yeah, it cleaned up pretty good with the pressure washer. Cleaned up all right, that's for sure. And there's a trick that I do for spray painting, especially with enamel paint like Rust-Oleum. You use a heat gun as you spray, and that helps get the curing process started for the enamel. Enamel hardens like a shell, like a candy shell, like on your M&Ms or something, and it just gets that curing process started, so there's less of a chance of runs. If there is a spot on the metal that's kind of like contaminated to where paint won't normally stick, it'll make it stick. So I do that for situations like this, or like spray painting subframes, things like that might have a lot of grime on it. Now it's gonna be hard to clean all that, of course, all those fins, but you just do your best. All right, getting there, looking good. Okay, new paper towel. If you're curious about what this is, I'm not sure if I mentioned it earlier, but it's a jack point for your floor jack for the differential. It's pretty clever. I like it. Should make jacking up the Z a lot easier. Cool. All right, this is looking good, guys. All right, so let's get it over on the box. Hopefully it works out well. And that hopefully just works out as planned. All right. So let's get it. Almost had it. Unfortunately, kind of knocked down the box there for a second. Let's get it set back up. There we go. It's not rocket science, but that'll for sure do it. Let's move this dolly out of the way. Okay, so like I said, let me get my heat gun, got a new can of spray paint, and what you do is you simultaneously heat as you paint, and it helps get the enamel tacky and sticky, and then it'll just set pretty quickly. So let's get that going. All right, I got Rust-Oleum Gloss Black. You just your basic can of Rust-Oleum black spray paint from Home Depot or Walmart or wherever you get your spray paint. This is good stuff for situations like this. Get a good shake. And with your heat gun, you just want to make sure you get a good, nice coverage of the heat. So, and you don't need to lay it on a lot. You're just providing a coating. Keep working around. We'll do 2 coats. First coat, I'll take my time just to make sure that the paint gets laid and kind of activated with the heat here. And then we'll go back and do another coat to kind of strengthen it. Okay. Camera adjusted a bit. The fins would be kind of tricky because like there's really no easy way of getting paint evenly spread down there, so just do your best. If you notice, I'm not like laying down on the nozzle. I'm just getting like tiny little bursts of spray. Looking good. Let's walk around the other side. And it's okay to paint the pinion flange. You know, it's not gonna do any harm, but we're gonna do it just to make it look nice. There we go. All right, so we'll just give it a moment to kind of start the curing process, get a little bit of, it's called gassing. The heat gun accelerates it a tiny little bit. And we'll go back and do one more quick round of paint and let it cure overnight. And this thing will look brand spanking new. This is called flashing right here. This process is called flashing the paint. All right, let's do one more quick coat and let the hours settle in overnight. Looking good. Like I said, this trick works with any enamel. It's great how it works. Okay, that should do it. It was two like medium coat paints. Use a heat gun and it just like activates the hardening process, and I don't see one paint run at all in here. So this works out really well, guys. Really good trick for cast iron. All right, so we're gonna let that dry and cure overnight, and then we'll go ahead and get everything put back in as far as those bushings and the diff cover. Tomorrow, I'm gonna take a rag, a paper towel with baked pretzel cleaner, and clean out the paint from inside. I should have taped that out, but it's no big deal. Yeah, I mean, it looks great. Looks really clean, nice black. Okay guys, this is it for tonight. Talk to you. All right, so next day here, got the diff off the crate that was used as the base to get this thing painted. Paint came out really good, guys. Really like the way it looks, all nice and clean with fresh black paint. I went ahead and put the bushings inside. These are the solid ISR 350, 370Z bushings. And like I mentioned earlier, I had to cut off the collar off of the other side of the bushing. And what I did is I just flipped it and then installed it. So it looks like a one-piece bushing, but this is how I need to run it for my S13 subframe swap. So everything is pretty much ready to go. So what we need to do next is let's go ahead and get the axle stubs in there, the axle stubs installed. So let's pull out these paper towels that we're using as a plug to prevent paint from getting in there. So let's get that cleaned out. Looks good. And then now what we need to do is let's get the axle stubs in there. So kind of sit there weird like at the weird angle because it has the fins on the bottom. So to install these axle stubs, you just put it in there, kind of get it lined up. And then you just use a mallet and just give it a good old tap. That's it. You can hear when it goes in there, you hear like an audible ting. There it is. So let's do the other side real quick, like so. Okay, same thing. Make sure the splines are lined up. There it is, you hear the ting. All right, so those are in. Let me get a piece of wood so that way we can get this kind of resting somewhat even like there. That looks good. All right, so when you install the diff cover, that's where we're at right now. You got to make sure the surface is prepped. We already wire brushed it. We already made sure that there was no RTV in the bolt holes. So if there was, you would use a self-tapping, a tap and run through to clean out any of the old RTV, but I already ensured that they were clean out, ready to go. Here's the original bolts that came with it. I went ahead and cleaned them. They're ready to go in. So they're sitting right there. So you use RTV, right? This is a gray Ultra RTV. That's what Nissan essentially uses from factory. I don't recommend using any other color because the color is generally a type of heat resistance or material resistance. Black may be okay, but try to stick with gray, the gray Ultra stuff. That's what Nissan uses from factory. And yeah, you put the RTV on the diff cover, not necessarily on this surface. There's really no point, but we'll get to that in a minute. So you need to prep the surface by removing any type of residue or contaminants like any grease. So, ideally you want to use a terry cloth, but I just use a paper towel. It's perfectly fine. So then you just, clean the surface. Just make sure there's nothing that would prevent RTV from fully adhering to the diff here. And you can see, I thought I was clean, but look how much stuff just came off. So that would potentially create a situation where RTV would not cure or stick properly and can cause a leak, right? So I'm just doing one last final wipe down. Just anything that I could clean before I stick it in there. Cool. So let me go get the diff cover real quick and get that ready for RTV. Hold on one second. All right, got the Z1 diff cover that I bought new, but this is used in this case because I'm putting on a different housing here, of course. But I've already removed all the RTV from these little channels here, and this is how you know, by the way, if there's ever a mating surface that requires RTV, you'll see these little grooves between all the bolt holes here, and that just tells you that's RTV. But honestly, you can use RTV on other surfaces that don't have this groove. Like, for example, some of the water pumps for the old VG30 for the Z31, you won't see these necessarily, but still use RTV. I mean, it's still gonna hold, but these are just like a little channel for the RTV to kind of recess into and get a good grip on things, but just a kind of a heads up on that. So just as I said before, you want to clean the surface here and get it prepped for RTV to make sure that it adheres correctly. So just kind of clean the surface, make sure you get in those grooves. You're just removing any contaminants that would prevent RTV from curing. That's all you're doing here. So before, when I pulled this off, I used a razor blade to get most of it off, and I used the wire brush just like I did before on the diff. So take your time. This again, it's not a race. There's always a right and wrong way to do things. All right, I mean, look at that, filthy. Okay, so we're about ready to slap the cover on, and let's get things kind of positioned here. So I'm gonna take my gloves off because my gloves have grease and other stuff on it. I don't want to contaminate. So when you put the RTV on, you don't need to put a ton on. You just need to put a small amount on. Let me see if I can find the tip. I think I lost the tip to this tube. Let me see if we can find it real quick. It makes it a whole lot easier for accuracy for a nice thin small bead go around. So let me go find it real quick. All right, got it. Let's put the tip on there. And again, you're not necessarily putting a lot on here. Technically, you're just supposed to put the bead on the inside of the hole, inside, but I just go around all the way. It's not gonna do anything bad. It's just a little, for me, I like the idea of it. The bolt having a complete circular pattern all the way around the whole diff cover. So doesn't matter really where you start, but again, you don't need to put a ton on, just to enough for it to tighten it and squish. So it's a little cold here in the shop right now, so the viscosity of this is kind of thick right now, so you can see that I'm kind of, as I squeeze, it's kind of hard. But yeah, this is essentially all you do. And again, if you put too much, you know, what could happen is when it compresses, the excess could go inside, and, you know, if the ring gear hits it, it could dislodge it. And I mean, it's not the best solution, or, you know, best thing to do, but just make sure you put like a adequate size. I think in the factory service manual, it actually tells you how tall the bead needs to be. But just, you know, you don't even need a whole tube. Z1 will give you a whole tube, but you definitely don't need to use a whole tube. And if you have like the caulking gun or the drill attachment, it makes it a whole lot easier, but this is easy enough as it is for sure. Almost done here. Kind of globber that one up a little bit, but it's okay. Almost done. Okay, that looks good to me. So I'm gonna look at my phone right now I forget the torque specs for the diff cover bolts. It's not much, but let me pull it up real quick on my phone to see what the torque specs are, because you want to make sure you get it tight and not over tight. Let's see. Almost there. Okay, so according to the specification here, it's 32 foot-pounds. That number right there. Actually, let me double verify that real quick. I think it's 32. Maybe I'm reading this wrong. Let me double check. I always forget which those numbers mean on the factory service manual. Let's see. Okay. Almost there, sorry guys. All right, so it's on page 16 is where the torque specifications are. I think that's where I was. Yeah, that's where I was. Let's see. Yeah, I was right. I'm sorry. I was totally right. I should have looked at the Legion here. So down here at the bottom, you'll say Newton meters, kilogram, and then foot-pounds of torque is the last number. So I was 100% right. So a little bit of a sanity check. So 32 foot-pounds of torque right there is the torque for the diff cover, 32. All right, sorry about that. So I do have all my torque sit next to me. So like I said, we're ready to install this. Let me get the camera adjusted so you guys can see pretty well. All right, so what I usually do before you slap it on there, go ahead and put one bolt through, maybe two, as your locating pins, if you will. And if you look at the bolts, these are the factory bolts. They have that shoulder at the end of it, and that's kind of like a guide, right? Because now it's installed, right? Look at that. Well, not installed, but it's in, so it'll help you align the bolts here. So if we do this, and then be careful not to reach underneath. So we'll go ahead and give me one moment. The piece of wood is not in the right position right now. So let me just move it real quick. It's kind of fighting me. So we'll just, we'll do it like that. My bad. All right, let's try that again. And you know, the same thing applies for when you torque this on. You do like a star pattern like you would with your tires and your wheels, because you got to apply the torque and distribute it evenly. I guess it's okay if you want to initially go around in a circle, but in terms of when you actually torque it on, you need to have it be in a star pattern. So I'm just hand tightening these just to make sure it's pretty much centered, you know. Cool. I did drop one bolt, so I'll reach down and get that in a moment. All right, looking good. I believe there's a total of 8 bolts. I think that's what I counted. This one kind of is fighting me a little bit. There it goes. And these guys underneath are kind of the hard ones because to deal with the sump and the fins. Okay. Now I am going to use my impact just to zip them on, but at a very low setting, not to get the torque applied, you know. So we'll use that. However, I do have that sensor that's going to block that one from being able to be used with the torque. Okay, so let me grab my sockets here. Got my torque wrench. I'll take off the number 17 that we were using a moment ago. The 14 I had to put over here. Here we go. All right, so like I said a moment ago, we're gonna just use my impact. We'll put it on the lowest setting just to prevent an accidental. And we'll just use this to zip it on real quick. And then we're gonna go ahead and do the star pattern. And the next one would be this guy. However, I can't necessarily get to it because that's sensor. So we'll just tighten it by hand and then use my box wrench here to snug it up a little bit. All right. And we'll just continue tightening. Okay, and that's it. Okay, so let's go ahead and torque this on. I don't think I'll need a longer extension. This one should be fine enough. So again, the setting was, let me double check, I thought it was 32. Yep, 32. So we'll get the torque wrench on here. Nope, already went past it. 32, there it is. And let's go ahead and torque this guy down. And we'll start over here. You know, I'll be honest, on this type of stuff, you can probably just do it by what feels tight to you. You probably don't necessarily need to go use a torque wrench, but it's never a bad practice to get in the habit of doing. Making progress. I'm deliberately gonna have this one be the last one, mostly because I'll just have to do that one by hand and not use a torque wrench. I could remove that sensor, but I don't really want to. Okay. All right, that should be it. Let me just double check real quick before I get to that last one. Okay, so that's good. And I'll just, like I said, I'll do this one by hand just to go by feel here. That's probably good right there. I'll just do one little more kiss of torque here. All right, that's good. Okay, so let's zero out the torque wrench. Okay, set stop. All right, so that's basically it, guys. Now to review your work as far as the RTV seal, what you want to look for is on the gasket surface, or like the gasket that comes out of the two mating surfaces, you want to look for like an even bead of squish all the way around. And I'm not going to bother flipping it, but that's what you need to look for to make sure that you didn't go too light in a particular area. So to me, this is good, right? We got it. So we'll go ahead and let this sit like that. But that's looking real good. That's a cool looking diff. And we'll probably be able to install this later on today, if not tomorrow. But that's it, guys. That's it. On 350 and 370s, and obviously Z32s even, they have the ABS sensors that pick up on these token rings. I'm actually gonna take advantage of those sensors if I didn't misplace them anywhere. I think they're over here actually. Here's the Q45 sensors. Also Z32, they're the same. But I want to use the 370Z sensors for traction control. I'm totally going to take advantage of the Mega Squirt and what it has to offer for traction control, except I just can't find where I put those sensors, but it doesn't matter. I'll go ahead and find them later, get them all installed and wired up. But diff is looking really great. I love the way it came out. It's just a cool looking, it looks like auto art, you know, if you ask me. So that's it, guys. That's it for now. We'll go ahead and call this a done video. I'm not going to bother showing how I install this on my Z, because it's almost like every S13 or even like a 350Z, like every differential setup's a little bit different. So I'll get mine installed and then maybe show some pictures afterwards of all the fun stuff I do. But okay, guys, I hope this helped out to some of you of how to rebuild a diff, 350, 370 diffs. It's pretty much the same procedures for a Z32 R200 or an S13 R200 or S14 R200. Those are all short nose diffs. It's pretty much the same, but for the long nose diffs, like a Z31 diff, there's another bearing involved because it's a longer pinion. It's like, again, here's the pinion for the 370Z. The pinion for a Z31 is like that much longer. So you need another bearing to stabilize it. But otherwise, that's it, guys. The install went pretty well. I'm really happy with how it turned out. So let me know what you think, and let me know if you have any questions on part numbers or anything else you may need help with in the future. Talk to you later, guys.